hanging out for the meeting after the meeting. None of us is really doing anything in terms of recovery at all.
It's a fellowship piece that was keeping you there.
Period.
Yeah.
At about a year sober, my mom came to me and she's like, you need to move out. And I was just about 18 and I was like, what? And she looked at me and she goes, you're the same little asshole you always were. You just think you deserve a goddamn medal because you're sober now because you don't drink. I'm sick of it. You can get out of here. You know, when I was a little boy, I had two like deep-seated fears because of what I had observed happen to the men around me on both sides of my family. One was that I would grow up and become a hobo or a bum because I wouldn't figure out how to live as an adult. And the second was that I would end up locked in a prison somewhere. And now those two things had happened, and they did, and they sent me to prison. So that for the first time in my life, I went away to the penitentiary.
It is now time to start the 25th episode of Sober Champs.
Yep.
We have a very special guest this evening. He comes to us from, well, you'll hear all about his story. We were talking about it earlier, but we have some very interesting stuff to do on this podcast tonight. And so just grab your popcorn, relax, and let me introduce our guest, Jason Vickers.
Come on, what's up,
How you
Jason?
doing, man? What's
How
up,
are we
baby?
doing?
Man, I'm doing real good, you guys. It's good to be here.
Welcome, man.
Yeah.
Welcome
Welcome,
to
bro.
episode 25, man. A quarter century.
We're
That's
super
right.
excited.
Yeah, we were
excited.
gonna like get suits, but we talked about like our financial situation might not be up to par right now, and so we settled for like what we got on.
Listen,
now.
we're on our way. We're on our way.
Yeah. Look, because there was this time where I remember do you have a few suits?
I got a couple of suits, yeah.
Like I think you have a 3-piece suit, if I'm not mistaken.
I do have a yes.
What?
There was this time
I've never
you
seen
came
you in
into
a
Cherry
3-piece.
Hall and you had your 3-piece suit on.
It's real.
And you had your braids in, and I was like, this guy looks really fucking fly. Like, it was like these moments where, well, I need a 3-piece suit. And so, yeah, I have one today, so that's pretty cool.
I don't own one suit. I don't own any suit.
Yet.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah. So, all right. So now, as we, start the pod, we usually start with a sober date. Now, as we move through this episode, we got a little flavor here and there. We got our cologne as usual. We got some, like you'll notice, we have some different stuff on the table. We have a table. How about that? We got some syrup. We got the Tahoe water this evening. All right, so let's do this. What is your sober date?
My sober date is November 24, 2016, which means I'm approaching 9 years.
Oh,
That's
approaching 9 years.
That's right. That's next month. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really excited about it. I didn't imagine this era of life was even a possibility, so I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah.
That's real.
All right.
Well, we're happy too.
Yeah, we're excited. So now, as you approach your birthday, I've had my own experience with the approach.
Sure.
And I know we're like, let's say about a month, a little less than a month out.
Yeah.
But is there some things that happen with you on the approach to your birthdays? Like, can you break it down as you approach your sobriety birthday and recovery birthday? What maybe you feel? What your thoughts are? What happens when you start to approach?
Man, I'm going to tell you that I'm a very nostalgic person by nature. You know what I mean? Like I really like nothing takes my heart away on this little trip out into the stars than really like taking a real look at where I used to be and what things are like now. Because once again, like I said, like I didn't imagine this was possible. For example, the block that we're recording this here podcast on has a shelter at the end of it called the Bread of Life. And I used to go into the Bread of Life in the morning, and the people, you want to go to the Bread of Life because they serve the best meal. And they also have a big pile in the back of all the stuff that came from the grocery store, the cakes, the pies, the fruit, all this stuff. And you want to load your backpack up with that because you know you're going back out to the jungle and you might not be back here for a week.
Yeah.
And if you need to be quiet and take a rest, I used to go and sit in their little day room and go underneath the table where nobody would bother you. Nobody would touch your stuff. And I could sleep for like 20, 30 minutes at a time. So I say that to say, pulling up, in a decent car, getting out, like, you know what I mean? And then coming like fresh and coming from a day of like being creative and doing the things that I love to do and walking down the streets of here. As I'm approaching these 9 years, I really like to reminisce on things like that all the time. In fact, the whole drive here from the South End, driving through all these neighborhoods, my history as my history of use, had me touch probably every single neighborhood in the city multiple times and in real close ways. I can't go anywhere where I didn't really live out some part of that part of my life in.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So like, along with the reminiscing and like thinking back, because I think that's also, it's such a beautiful thing that you get to come through and be a part and spread a message of like things that for other people that they don't have to experience in the way that you're living today. But is there anything that you do every year to celebrate, or how do you get down every year? Is there anything that you do that's exciting?
Well, for me, the way it works for me is my sobriety date is 3 days away from my belly button birthday. So we usually kind of put that together. Okay. You know what I mean? So I have a couple of anniversaries in my life kind of put up in that one thing. So for me, for this week is like, you know, it's always a really important week. This year, the 24th, of course, is my sober anniversary, and my birthday is on Thanksgiving Day today, which is also interesting because my people trace their heritage back to our family lineage back to people who brought corn, you know, 45-pound bags of corn, 50, 60 miles out to the coast to feed people who were in a bad way. And it's a thing that we now call Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I say that to say it's like there's kind of this history, this karma in my family of people like doing things like this. So like being that I'm an Eastern Woodlands native from what is now known as Massachusetts, Thanksgiving Day is a day that's real kind of deep for us in that particular way. It's always a time to really reflect and really take a pause, gather up as a family, and remember all the different ways in which we as Indigenous people are survivors. And also the fact that I have been blessed to survive to this part of my life through all these things that we've been through. Yeah. Yeah. And like they say in recovery, that blessed thing, my favorite quote is like, thank God I don't look like everything I've been through.
Yep.
Ring the bell.
Yeah.
That's a good quote.
Yeah.
It's real.
Take us, where are you from? So
I was born in a city called Worcester, Massachusetts. I was born to my mother's Italian. My father's Native. I was born to very, very young parents. My mom had me and then turned 17. My daddy was a couple years older than that, and very brown. So the Italian side of my family kind of felt away about that. It was 1972, and in Massachusetts, that was a very kind of a controversial thing at the time in this particular little piece of territory where we were from. So, but we grew up in that. And when I was about 5 years old, my daddy packed us all up in the car and came out here. So,
what was out here?
Out here was prosperity and jobs and resources that weren't quite available in the same way back east. See, I had an uncle who was seeing this girl who was also seeing a member of a motorcycle club, and in 1968. The biker found out that she was seeing my uncle, and my uncle had to kind of get up out of town. So my uncle was a really, really talented pool hustler. And so him and my daddy and it was 1968, and they just got their little jackets on and they stuck their thumbs out, and you know what I mean, and started hitchhiking, and they made their way all across the country. My uncle held the pool stick and my daddy held a pistol, and they hustled all the way from Massachusetts to Watts, where they finally lost that pistol and that pool cue to an old pimp named Gentleman Gene in a pool game, and had to walk out of that place back to back. And they ended up in Hollywood with another friend of theirs. And my uncle met this woman who was from Seattle, and she brought him on a little trip up here. And where we come from, it wasn't like this. So he came back to my dad and was like, man, I've been to Seattle. You got to see this place. And brought my father up here, and within about 6 months, my dad came home, and they made the arrangements, loaded up the car, and we drove. I came in with a Pinocchio coloring book and a Bambi coloring book and that little box of 36 crayons across the U.S. in 1977, And that's how we came to Seattle.
Dang.
Yeah.
And so where in Seattle did you land when you first came here?
We landed in the West. So I was in West Seattle, right outside the West Seattle Junction.
Mm-hmm.
My dad got to work doing, my dad was they were still hustling. So my dad was doing 6 or 7 things, and so was my uncle, and they were doing this and doing that. And one thing led to another. We ended up moving. We because of some of the things they were doing, we moved to a new house every year. So for my first several years living here, because they would kind of set up shop, work for a year, set up shop somewhere else. I started living in all these different neighborhoods throughout the city. And I started getting exposed to just, like you move to a new neighborhood, there's a new group of kids. You're going to get on the bus to go to a new school. So I didn't go to the same school 2 years in a row until like 5th grade. And then after that, I don't think I ever went to the same school for 2 full years in a row ever again. But I just took a big old tour all around the city. I love the city. I love everywhere I go in the city. I feel at home because I've either lived there or been down bad there, or you know what I mean. Any of those things. So
spent time everywhere.
Right. So I truly I love being. I love where I was born. I'm very proud of it, and it's my ancestral homeland. But I also love being from the town in that particular way.
All right. So, what's one of your favorite areas in the town? Can you put a thumbprint on one? Cause see, I can relate to like that traveling throughout and touching each little nook and crevice of the area, and just running around and being a part of. And so, is there a certain area that that comes to mind that you really enjoy out of here?
I'm gonna say I enjoy where I currently reside. And currently, I'm a South End resident. The streets, the sign, there's a sign that hangs from the wires at the end of my driveway. And on one side it says Seattle city limits, and on the other side it says Renton city limits. You know what I mean? So I live in about as South End as you can get and still be in Seattle. Yeah. I live in the absolute, border of the South End. But I love it. I love this particular neighborhood is, it wasn't too long ago that they called it the most diverse zip code in the U.S.
Okay.
And you guys have probably spent enough time there to know that you really do get a sprinkling of like the whole world.
Yeah.
You do.
And I love it now. The way things are in these neighborhoods and the way we experience like community spaces together, like the creativity is so lovely. You know what I mean? Like walking through the neighborhood and seeing, and just literally seeing people from all over the place, literally all over the world. And they all have a little bit of the flavor of who they are and where they're from with them and get to express that now,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. All right. So you get over here, you're touching down, you're making your moves. Do you remember the first time you started getting active with drugs and alcohol?
Sure. I lived in a family where those things were always around us. It was just kind of part of the territory, and as it had been for generations in my family on both sides. So, seeing people preparing drugs in various ways and dealing with drugs and like in the business of substances as well was a thing that was just kind of like I watch people now or talk to people now, or even when I was using, would be around people who were they would do their things and they would be so sure that their kids don't really know what's happening. This is just us doing this. Is us. I promise you, as a kid, I knew everything because I was observant and I was curious. And the one thing they didn't want me to see, the one thing they were kind of trying to keep away from the youngsters was the only thing I was focused on.
Yep.
What are you guys doing up there?
Where are they going? Right. Yeah. What are they up to?
What's going on downstairs? Why they been in the car in the driveway for 20 minutes?
Yes. Yeah. Why are they coming out laughing and shit? What's going on?
For real. Why is everybody why does it look like everybody somehow took the edge off? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or why is everybody so, talkative?
Why is everybody chatting all of a sudden? Shit's quiet around here most of the time. Damn.
So I say that to say, I seeing those things.
You're curious. Really curious.
So for me, keep it all the way real with you, the summer between 3rd and 4th grade, there was a kid who lived across the street from me. And one day he said, we're going to go smoke this Sensimelia. And I was like, what's that? And and he took out a little pipe and a little lighter, and we went and sat on these stairs like down the block from our house in West Seattle. We lived on like just off of Admiral Way, just up the hill from Alki.
Okay.
And we smoked for the first time. And that's when I figured out what was really going on with this thing that had been happening in my house.
Yeah.
You know, there was a Coca-Cola tray that used to be under our couch, and it had a little pile of sticks and a little pile of seeds and a little pile of buds and a little pile of shake. And it was like, oh, okay, this makes sense to me. The one thing I didn't know yet, because I was so young, is that I was convinced that like the shake was the thing, right?
Yeah.
So I went and got the shake and put it, and here's what, and I'll tell you, I come from a family like this. The first thing I did the next day when I figured out I could like get myself a little handful of that stuff was I put it in a sandwich baggie, and I gave it to the 8th grade kid at the end of my block to talk to the 6th grade kid who had been stealing my bike out of my yard all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Like
I'm a little guy,
right?
You know?
Take this, and then can you take care of the guy
for real? Like, can you kind of help me? Because I had observed people doing what we would now refer to as making moves like that all the time. I thought, man, this will work.
Yeah,
and it worked out just fine.
That's what's up.
But so I like having that experience of like touching those things and getting a feel for that stuff right away was like, oh, this is what everybody's so excited about. This is what everybody's paying attention to.
How did you feel that first moment when you got loaded? Was that something that you wanted to keep doing, or can you walk us through that?
The first moment I did it, I loved it. About a half hour later, I was a little nervous about getting caught and wanted to, and I went over, I kind of went back into my house. It was the summer and our doors were kind of open, and the kids in the neighborhood was just kind of like that. And I got a couple of sticks of double mint gum. And, but I loved it. Yeah. Right away. It was like, because for me now, it was like, I had been in this house around like this thing that was kind of supposed to be like a secret from me as a youngster. And now I was like kind of in on the secret.
Right.
And that
was
to me
no longer a secret.
Well, that to me was everything. Yeah. And having moved here from the East Coast, talk a little different, didn't come from really like a wealthy family. So, like my life kind of reflected that. It wasn't the easiest thing to do to make friends here. So I definitely developed a relationship with feeling like I was on the outside looking in a lot of different ways from a very early age. And being a young Native person, like even like in going to school here, they would have Indian heritage classes, and the Coast Salish kids and the other Native kids who were here, where I'm from, it's the most natural thing in the world to be a combination of Black and Native. Mm-hmm. If I showed you a picture, and I might show you one later. If I show you a picture of my grandfather, my grandfather says it's just a picture of a young Black boy. You know what I mean? And that's and then my dad reflects my dad reflects his family all the way down to me. But I say that to say, like, I showed up to school with this big head of curly hair. You know what I mean? In this East Coast accent, and all these Native kids were like, you know what I mean? Who's he supposed to be?
Right.
And I felt that really strongly as a kid. It was the late 70s version of what we now refer to as the Seattle Freeze.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we've been talking about like how to open that freeze up, how to thaw it out. Just because a lot of people, we talk about it. I'm 42 years old. Actually, what am I? 43, sorry. I'm 43 years old, and I'm still trying to build friendships. Yeah. And it's hard to build friendships when you don't have a lot of friends. And I'm from Seattle, meaning it's hard to like, I don't know if it's trust as much as it's like follow through with people.
Yeah.
Or there is no follow through.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
If you guys are like me, you can go anywhere in the town and you'll know a handful of people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm with my girl and she's like, everywhere we go, it's like you know somebody or somebody knows you, like everywhere we go.
Yeah.
Yes.
If it's because I work in the world of food. So if it's a restaurant or if it's a club, just growing up in hip hop here, whether it's a DJ or we go to a show and it's visual artists, it's all kinds of stuff. All the way down to like going to the games, going to the arenas, like having relationships with people in that world. I have relatives who play professionally, and I have lots of close friends who have been like, for example, like one of my closest chef friends In fact, the person who runs the kitchen that I currently work in was the chef of the Mariners for 23 years.
Come on.
You know what I mean? Like, so I say that to say, like, Seattle is kind of a small enough place and a big enough place that if you grew up here, you really can like move around everywhere and be in a familiar setting.
Yeah.
And see
you know
people.
a lot, but you're not close with many, you know?
That's exactly it.
That's how it is.
Yeah.
So I can relate to that. I guess what I'm thinking about is when did it start really picking up? When did your drug use start picking up, and when did things start getting crazier for you?
So
just
for me,
in terms of
what I can tell you is like that first experience with weed. Like I played with weed for a little while here and there.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it wasn't until a few years later in the first half of my freshman year. I was at Cleveland High School. And my parents had gotten divorced, and things had been pretty challenging, and it wasn't exactly like an easy divorce. And everybody was living out a variety of subcultures and lifestyles, you might say. And in the midst of that, I was going to Cleveland High School. I was living in a situation. I had come from living with one of my parents in a situation where it was like very loose and freeform, and I was sort of like running the house in a way. My sister was about my kid sister was about 5 years younger than me, and I was doing a lot of kind of taking care of her. My mom would work all day up at Virginia Mason, and then she would come home and she would pick up shifts as a cocktail waitress at the Alki Tavern. So this kind of real busy biker bar, on the beach in the early 80s when it looked like Miami, you know what I mean? And it was like, they were acting like it was Miami, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
And so it was really going. And they were there. So she would come home and kind of be with us for about 45 minutes while she got ready, and my mom, like I said, my mom had us when she was really young. So my mom was in her 20s, you know what I mean? And still just kind of figuring herself out and kind of, just getting into her life.
Yeah.
And found herself in this real big scene that was happening in the 80s on Alki. And everybody who was in it was real busy and into it. So I was kind of spending a lot of time with my sister, and my father in the meantime had kind of cooled off some of his lifestyle and gotten married, and was living a little bit more of a conservative, just kind of a mellow existence. He got a job for the school district, doing some custodial and like engineer work, and had kind of settled his life down a little bit. We had just come from mom's where it was like, you know what I mean? We were doing the most, to this house where we were like, they wanted to teach us discipline and teach us rules and things like this. Mm-hmm. So they were, and I looked at it like they're trying to break me. Like they think, like you break a pony, you know what I mean? And I was very, very resistant to that. So I say all that to say, somebody said to me once in recovery, the reason why that first drink felt so good is because before my first drink, life wasn't really going so great. You know what I mean? There was a lot of stuff I wasn't that happy about. So my first drink goes fall of the year 1987. My friend comes to me and says, "Hey, we're gonna cut school and go up to my grandmother's house, and we're gonna have a drink." And I was like, "Oh, okay, let's go." And a little crew of misfits at that school, and so we dipped out. We went up to her grandmother's house, like 6 blocks from the school, and the house was kind of an old style house, like I said, it was 1987. So it's a few years back, and the style was a little different. And this house wasn't even an 80s style. It was like a 70s style. It had the kind of like the avocado tile on the floor, a lot of brown, like a lot of orange and brown, things like this. There was the crisscross wooden spoon and fork on the wall, like the tiki style, you know what I mean? Yep. It was just very much like that. And so my friend opened up the cupboard, and then she took out these brown glass cups. I remember these brown glasses, and she took out a bottle of Black Velvet Canadian whiskey, aged 9 years, and put it on the counter, and a bottle of Coke out of the fridge. And they were like, we're going to have whiskey and Coke. I said, okay, that sounds good. And I went upstairs to use the bathroom. And while I'm looking in the mirror when I was upstairs, I kind of had this like auspicious feeling. I was like, we're really going to do this, And I came downstairs, and they thought it would be cute they each poured themselves a little shot and topped it off with soda. Well, they poured me a whole bunch of whiskey and then topped it off with a little bit of soda because they knew we couldn't tell through the brown glasses that, and I wasn't there when they made the drinks. Mm-hmm. And so we all 1, 2, 3 took our drink, and I was like, whoa. And And we were going, then, and then nobody said anything to me about it. Everyone's kind of looking at each other, how kids are. And I popped a bag of microwave popcorn. I went out and sat in the living. We all went and sat in the living room on the couch and this and that. And I sat down on this big red beanbag chair and like sunk into it. And I had this bowl of popcorn. And we were watching Gilligan's Island. And I remember that it was the episode of Gilligan's Island where the professor was receiving a radio signal in his fillings in his teeth. And they thought that they might be able to signal for help and get off the island. And I remember as I'm watching it, this feeling from the top of my head down, right? It starts moving through my body and it's warm and it's comfortable.
Yeah. And
these people that I'm with are the people. Like this is who I want to be with.
You made it.
Yeah. I'm not, and I'm not worried about what everyone thinks about me at school. I'm not worried about any of those things. And in fact, so comfortable. And I had such a great time. And a young boy got to thinking about like what was happening in my life and what I liked and what I didn't like. And, I got this feeling that, I went home and I took all the books out of my duffel bag and I filled it up with clothes. And I didn't get caught. I went in the house. I went to sleep. And the next day I got up to go to school and I just didn't come home.
Wow.
I was almost 14 years old.
Wow.
And I went downtown and I got off the bus at First and Pike. And it was the 1987 First and Pike. And I say that to say you might never know it now looking at it with, the sort of modernization of it, the Starbucksification of it, you know what I mean? But it was the straight up red light district downtown. All the adult theaters were there, the sex workers were walking, and I got off this bus and I was like, here we are in the big wide world. And I'm like, yeah, a young kid.
And when you had packed your bag with clothes, were you planning to just go? Like, were you out of there? You were on the move.
I had this drink. I was so fed up with being unhappy all the time and uncomfortable with the way that my parents were with each other and being, and just the way things were in the household and what was happening, all the anxiety around being in school, all of these things, I felt so free and relieved of that I was just like, I'm just going to go and see what happens.
Yes.
I like this so much more than all of this.
Yes.
I'm so tired of all this.
Yeah.
And I really felt that way at almost 14 years old.
Yeah. I remember for me, one of the things that happened with alcohol was everything slowed down. Like my mind was so, I would even call it paranoid in a way, or always on a cycle. And when it was just always running the hamster cycling class, right?
Yeah.
A whole bunch of hamsters were doing this, and I can't slow it down. And then I have a drink, and then it's like,
yeah.
And then I'm not stressing about what I'm saying, how I'm saying it, what I'm thinking, what I'm saying to this girl. Everything's it's okay.
Such a deep form of relief.
Yeah. So I can relate to that. So you get downtown. That's right. Okay. So what happens downtown that day?
13 years old.
So one of the first things that happened is these two Native kids tried to rob me. Right. There was kind of a big scene down around what we now call Native Park, right? Native Park and around First and Pike, and there were a lot of indigenous people kind of in the street life down there. And this kid saw me get off the bus looking brand new. And and him and his friend came down and they tried to corner me and rob me. And then this girl came down and they had something between them and she wanted to fight them and they ended up getting into their little mix. And while they did that, I was like, out of here the other way. And my first 24 hours downtown, I mean, a lot of things happened. Some of them were, I went to try to find some safe harbor a couple blocks up the street and ran into one of those things that should never happen to young kids. That unfortunately happened, and then after that, I found a couple of people downtown that helped me stay safe. A couple of people that we refer to now as sex workers. Nobody called themselves that back in the day, or each other.
What they call them down back in the day?
Oh, they were just hookers and hoes, and you know what I mean. And they were just kind of doing their thing, and it used to be Pike Street was the stroll, right? So from First and Pike all the way up to Capitol Hill was the Streezol. It was where it was going down. And a couple of those ladies kind of really like took me in and were kind of like my aunties, you know what I mean? And made sure I was safe and like made sure I was taken care of. And my connection to that part of the world remained throughout my using career. You know, it just kind of became a part of the landscape. But for me, I was out there for a couple of weeks. And then, while I was out there, I had a couple of friends in the West who were around my age still, who were like, whose parents were a little, they could either sneak me in to spend the night, or their parents were cool with me coming over, or there were a couple of the other kids who were already really kind of experienced at being out there, who showed me a few things. Like there used to be newspaper recycling bins, used to be a big thing, right? Everybody go and throw their newspapers in the recycling bin. These big wooden kind of boxes. And I used to climb, and I was small enough to like climb in the box with my friend, and we would bury ourselves in newspaper and sleep, and it would keep us warm. Wow. And nobody knew where we were. Couldn't nobody get at us, because you just disappear inside the little recycling box. Yeah,
I think this is one of the wilder stories I've heard, man. Because I can just see it. I can feel it right now. Because I'm from here. Yeah, this is where I'm at, and like
I promise you, we felt like we were on the adventure of a lifetime.
Yeah, that's what it sounds
and this
like.
Is all through 13 to
15 was a lot of this.
Yeah. So wait a second. So then where do you ever go back home? Are you like checking in? Or are you like saying what's up?
Eventually, my family caught up to me when I was at a friend of mine's house, also in the West, and they brought me home. And then my family started. There was a lot of like counseling started to happen. It, of course, wasn't very long until I had a couple of bouts of legal trouble. You know what I mean? And but at the same time, my father was working to stabilize life. And my mother was going through kind of the later stages of. My mother ended up with a partner who was extremely physically abusive to her, and because of the nature of my parents' separation, they were very separate, you know. And I used to always wonder why my dad wouldn't go over there and just show this guy what was up, you know what I mean? But it like I couldn't understand that as a kid, but it just really wasn't like that, you know. Meaning like my mom it was of course a thing that my mom was trying to keep very, very secret, you know what I mean? So like, it wasn't like, you know, for a long time, it wasn't like anybody else could even tell. Yeah. But I could tell. And I was too young to really kind of do anything about it. And but I really struggled with that. I had a real problem with that. Yeah. And wanted to kind of keep my sister safe in that situation too. But, the level of conscience, it got to a point where once I knew I could leave and go and run away again and go to the street and just like, you know what I mean? And just be out, like I could just go back to living the adventurer's life. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I'm Tom Sawyer, you know, why stay here and see this miserable pain and be unhappy, or like these rules, and I have to check in and I have to call somebody and I have to go to counseling, and you know what I mean? I really kind of preferred to just kind of do what I was doing at the time. Yeah. And I spent most of my teenage life kind of in that mix until the consequences started stacking up. You know, I ended up leaving Cleveland and going to a school called Marshall up near Green Lake, a school for kids who got kicked out of school. Well, you went to Roosevelt, so you already know. Yeah, Marshall's right down the street.
Yeah, that's 3 blocks away. Yeah.
And then I went back to Garfield the following year. And right on the corner of 23rd and Cherry, where there used to be a little place called the Bulldog, there was this old man had a pool hall. And by a pool hall, I mean he had a room, like an undecorated room with his doors right there on. There was that little corner door that used to be right on 23rd and Cherry. And he had a styrofoam cup of whiskey, and he had a good jukebox and a pool table. And we could go in there as kids because he wouldn't care. And we could smoke cigarettes in there. We could play little 25-cent games of pool. And I liked it. I liked it so much that by about October of that school year, my mom got a notice in the mail that I hadn't been to school in 30 days, and I was done with Garfield, or Garfield was done with me. Let's put it that way. And so it was back to Marshall for me, you know, and I discovered a lot of things in there. Like there was drinking, of course, and all that, but I discovered like taking LSD and, you know, doing a couple of other things, which for some reason in the town was a real big deal for the 13 to 17-year-old crowd.
LSD.
I discovered the Ave, and when we would go and buy weed on the Ave, we would buy acid on, like the Ave was like this open air drug market that it was like all the kids from everywhere, like kind of knew about and just went and we all knew like the little characters and the little figures who, you know, there was this dude with the white leather jacket and there was this dude with the little Flavor Flav clock and there was, you know what I mean? These characters, these real characters, I don't need to mention their names because I don't know where they are now, but they were like, you know, I mean, in a way they were like big figures to us. Like everybody from that era. I've met so many people now in recovery, people that have even come and sat in this room and had these conversations who knew all those same people and were all that same mix. Of course, none of us met till much later, but we all know that we were like stalking up and down the same blocks.
Yeah, that's crazy.
For sure. In the late 80s into like early 90s.
I think that's one of the craziest things about like growing up is how we were drawn to certain things. Like our role models were very unique, you know, meaning like cats that were hanging out on a street that's so wild that you're just sitting there like, man, I like what he's doing.
Well, because it looks like he got it together.
Yeah, exactly.
He got swagger, he's confident.
Big wad of money, maybe, you know.
We're a bunch of nervous kids with issues looking for somebody but we're still looking for family connection. Yep. We're still looking to belong to something. Yep. We're still looking for people older than us to look up to take our cues, to take our social cues from and kind of show us how to be. Yep. Like, even though we're not saying that's what it is, it's what it is. Yeah. And it's what it is everywhere. Like that's universal. It doesn't matter like what part of it doesn't matter where you come from. Like if you're kind of untethered and loose in that point in your adolescence, you're looking for that. We're looking for something to latch onto. And that's what it was like for us out there.
Well, I can even relate to it because that was only like 5, 6, 7 years ago for me. Like it's not that long ago. So like a lot of the stuff you're talking about, I'm like thinking back to like how that was for me, you know,
it felt,
yeah, bro. Cause I'm going on 4 years. So I'm like 3.5 years sober. So it's like it's crazy. It's like, I can relate to everything you're saying, but also just to imagine how it used to be for you and how crazy it must've been. Yeah. You know, I was on fent. It was just slow for me. It was just slow for me, but it seems like you were moving and shaking all over.
And I was definitely the type to turn it up, not turn it down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's definitely my whole career was like that. Yeah. I wanted to go faster, not slower.
Yeah.
Did you you said you got legal troubles?
We got the first time I got booked, I was probably around 14.
Okay.
And, we were down in front of this place called the Rainier Club downtown. And, this kid brought me down there and he was panhandling. You know, he was asking these dudes in suits who were these old guys who looked like they had money who were coming out of the club. If they would shoot him $1 or $5 or any change. And I kind of looked at him with this look of like, and I was like, what are we doing? Like, are we begging people for money? And I remember I looked at him and I was like, man, I know how to steal. Like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? And we ended up getting a little bit of money. We got on a bus to go out to Issaquah, which was a place that might as well have been Mars to me.
Wild.
Mars. I've never been.
They're like, we're going to Issaquah.
I had a fucking metro.
I had an encyclopedic and still do in a lot of places knowledge of what bus goes where, and you know, and I'm talking about everywhere from like Shoreline, at the time from like Green Lake to like Rainier Beach, like. People would ask me like it's a joke. They're like, "Hey, Jason, what if I want to get to West Seattle?" I'd be like, "Oh, well, then you're gonna have to take the 16 downtown, and then you cross the street and get on the 55, and the 55, and I look over and they're all like, see what I mean?" And I'm like,
"Hey, why are you playing?
Damn, man, why are you playing so much?" Yeah, and it was like that everywhere except for like Issaquah was different. It was like that was deep.
You were like,
"That's I'm trying to go. If I get the 9 or the 15 downtown, the Issaquah's like the 436 bus. You know what I mean? The 375.
You're like, remember?
271.
So we're out there and we're waiting for our dude to show up, and we're sitting behind this little community center, and this couple it looked like this square couple rode by on 10 speeds, and the kid I was with got up and like yelled something at him, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And they turned around and they came running towards us, and like they were like super soldiers, like Terminator. Like they like put their bikes on and they came running to us, and as they're running up the stairs, the dude unzips his, because they both had these like little tracksuits on. And it was like the late 80s when like they would be in the tracks, like it's, you know what I mean?
It's normal.
And he unzipped his shirt and he opened up and they were like cops.
Oh shit.
And we turned around to bounce, and like this police cruiser pulled in, this old ass cop jumped out and like had us pinned by the wall. And like, anyway, first time, like, so I got booked. You know what I mean? I got arrested and they put me in the little holding cell.
What'd you get booked for?
Just for malicious mischief.
Whoa.
Yeah, you were in
there was-
Issaquah.
I got booked for being 14 and being a runaway in Issaquah.
Yeah, there
you
you
know
go.
what I mean?
Oh,
Looking
okay.
like my little punk rock
There we
kid
go.
from downtown.
All right. Yeah, you did not belong.
For real.
They were
And-
like, yo, we need to get this guy out of here.
And they finally called my dad. My dad came to get me. My dad took me to where my mom had been living at the time, which was near the U District. And I remember walking up to my mom's house, and the window on her door was like smashed out. And she came to the door, and it was obvious that she had been, like something had happened that night, and she was a little roughed up.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad left, and I stayed there that night. But again, I got up that morning, and I was like, I'm not fucking doing this. I can't. It was just too much. It was just like, I felt like everybody was betraying everybody else. I felt like it was just like this, going back to my family just felt like there was nothing good there.
Yeah.
I was almost obsessed with like changing my name, going somewhere, and it's just being a different person. And that's part of what the allure of like going back to the street was like.
Yeah.
It was just like, I can reinvent myself and be anything I want.
That's right.
That's, and what I didn't know at the time was, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in a minute, is I was laying down a template in my mind, because much later in life, and I'm sure we'll talk about that when we get to that. But like much later in life, I ended up like leaving my adult life and going back to the street consciously for the exact same reason. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that brings us to like, all right, so now you're let's just say you're 19, 18, 19. Sounds like you're not doing too well as far as like academics.
I was actually a real smart kid. I was
Right.
I was really bored in school.
Bored
And
as hell.
Marshall didn't really have anything happening as far as academics went. You know what I mean? And
That's where they put you.
it was just where they put and like Marshall was just full of hustlers, and it was like just
The rejects.
yeah, exactly. So it was like pick a hustle. For
Right.
example, I had like I had an English teacher, language arts teacher, who like you needed to make 25 points in a quarter, and that was like your quarter's worth of credit. And she said, every haiku you write, you'll earn 1 point of credit. So I just started selling haikus. I'll write a haiku. Look, I'll write 15 syllables about anything. It don't even matter.
What's a haiku?
A haiku is like
It's like 575. What is it?
It's 15 syllables. It's supposed to be a piece of poetry. I believe it's a Japanese tradition. Writing haikus.
It's like 5 syllables and then so many syllables and then so many, but you're
That's
trying
right.
to make 15 syllables.
And it's so at the time, it was like in English you may have a sonnet, like you might like a little piece of prose, but so I just started writing them and selling them. You know what I mean? I'll like, look, you give me $20 or like a little something to smoke, like I'll give you your quarter's credit. You know what I mean? And so many of the classes were like that. What they were looking for was the work, because that school was kind of a warehouse for kids who were just getting in trouble everywhere
Right.
else.
Yeah.
So I would be in and out there, and Marshall was the kind of school, like even if I was in the street, I still might show up to school sometimes because everyone I knew was at school, and everybody who like had the stuff I was trying to get my hands on was at school, and I actually I went from this like scenario of being in and out of the house, to just renting an apartment.
Yeah.
I got a little dishwashing job and rented an apartment over on 24th and Cherry.
And how old were you at this point?
17.
17.
Yeah. And I had been back home with my mom and kind of just kind of intermittently and stuff. But this was like my first chance to, because once I had established this thing that like, listen, if we get in one fight, like if we get in an argument about something, I'm just going to go, you know what I mean? I might sneak out tonight and just go see the Rocky Horror Picture Show at the Neptune. And if I come home and like, I'm going to get in trouble about it, then I'll just stay out. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'm a kid and to me, it's fun. Like I'll go sleep. I'll go hang out at the laundromat all night because we had a little 24-hour laundromat in the neighborhood.
Yep.
You know what I mean? The lights are on and it's warm and like I could just be there and draw pictures and write graffiti on the wall, like whatever it was, just be there all night. So like, and until I got myself a place. And I ended up in a situation where I got booked. The first time I got booked, and I got booked into juvenile hall over on 12th and Alder. I got in there and there was this one cat who was a CO in there who was a guard. He walked me into this room. I don't even remember what it must have been like shoplifting or something like that. It must have been a shoplifting charge because I did a lot. I did a lot of that to take care of myself when I was out there. And this dude brought me into this little cell and threw me like they did, like as the saying goes, he touched every single part of that room with me. You know what I mean? Threw me over here, threw me over there. And I was sitting there and I was like, I'm like, this is my first time being in junior, like really going past the police station to the, you know what I mean? And he came in 2 hours later and he opens up the door and looks at me and goes, man, I thought you were somebody else. And he threw us a can of Pepsi and a Snickers bar on the bed and he walked out and like, he gave that to me to like never say anything about it again.
Yeah.
And of course I wasn't going to say a damn thing. And I remember my mom came in, they called my name and my mom came in and I looked down there and she was in the big window, you know, and everybody in all the cells could like hear. And she goes, yep, that's him. And she turned around and walked out.
Dang.
And they were like, and the lady looked at me and goes, I guess you're not going home. And all the kids in the cell up and down the row were like, oh shit. And I was like, wow. So that was my first experience with any kind of incarceration.
You know, that's interesting because a lot of parents, you know, my dad told me, he said, look, man, if you ever, like, he sat me down, he tried to watch, he had me watch Scared Straight.
Yeah.
He had me, you know, he just had me like, look, man, this is not the way. And by the way, if you ever get booked, don't call me.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, he think he's bluffing, bruh.
Yeah.
I think he's bluffing. I get booked in the county. First guy I call is Shake, my dad. Hey, man. He said, what's up? And I said, yeah, he said, I told you not to call me.
Yeah.
Click. And I was like, ooh. I called my mom.
Yeah.
Hey, Mom, you know what your dad said? They're separated, but she still had the same line. You know what your dad said? You're not supposed to call here. This is a separate house. They're divorced.
Yeah.
But they got the same lines.
Yeah.
Click. And I was like, oh my God. It was just so, some parents believe that sitting in there and having your peace or your freedom taken away and like, oh, you want to play around with the big boys, sit your little ass down and have a little quiet time.
Yeah, catch a real consequence.
And some people will respond really well to that shit and like never go back. And some people will be like, well, you know, it wasn't that bad and still keep trying to fuck around and find their way around. And so, yeah, so how'd that end up? How did it end up?
Interestingly enough, it ended up like I did that little run, spent a little minute in juvie, and then I left and I went back to school, and I was actually back at my mom's for a minute, and you know some stuff was happening. Marshall was like just in that era was like gang activity had really started to really blow up in the city. Yeah. I'm talking about like 88, 89 school years, you know what I mean, and things like that were just getting active, and it was reflected, of course, in the school where kids got kicked out of all the other schools for getting in trouble. And as you can imagine, it was really kind of like active,
picking up,
real active.
Wild that would be the way that they would organize shit.
It's crazy. Yeah,
you know, like
you look at it like they concentrated that energy in one place, like for real. And they're not discriminating. And it's busing, and they draw stuff from every city, or from every part of the city. So it's like, and you can imagine like at the time where it's real, when it's real sensitive, like what neighborhood you're in and what neighborhood you're from.
They got the CD, the West Seattle,
they're just pulling kids. Like, they got South End. Everybody's there. Everybody's on the one campus, and it's like, you know, what you thought might happen happened all the time.
And this is right next to Roosevelt.
It's right down the street from Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Where everybody was like, you know,
that's an interesting decision.
It was wild. And plus, you had, like, when I went to Roosevelt, you'd have the Marshall kids on the bus to go to Marshall.
Yeah.
So then there'd be a mix of cats like you go to Roosevelt, but they go to Marshall. And so then it was just wild.
It's like regular American high school kids and like these like young bandits for real.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Trying to smoke cigarettes on the bus.
Think about it is how it is today is it's so separated. Like they're so aware of that cognizant, because just like watching the Seattle Public School District, because I'm kind of intertwined with it a little bit, they keep that shit pretty separate. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like
They
try.
Well, and I think
always, you know, keep it
of course
fully
you can't.
separate.
No, but I think a place where they learned a lot of those lessons was from
That's what
we're talking about.
Hey, better try.
They knew
about better than throwing them all into the fucking gladiator den.
Right.
They knew that they were hustling haikus up in Marshall. They had to switch that shit up.
Yeah, it was just like,
shit.
And it really was a little bit of everybody. everybody. You know,
were you trying any illicit drugs at this time? Were you trying did you get into cocaine?
LSD and all that?
Did you get into meth? Did you get into?
I did, but it was a little later. What happened at this time is actually the first time I got sober was December 14th. My first recovery anniversary was December 14th, 1989. I was still going to Marshall, and I get called into the principal's office. And I go into the principal's office, and we had this counselor who was real good. And I'll tell you why in a minute. We had the counselor. We had Miss B. Cox, the vice principal, who was like she was about handling business. We had the principal, and we had 2 detectives, and my mom. And
you get
me.
called in.
Right. So it's like the round table, and I come in, and like all these people are at the table. You know, and the counselor starts like, she's like, you know, they're just a good cop, bad cop. It's so cold. Like my counselor's like, so we're a little concerned about this, and I look where my mom's just kind of looking at me like, why you got me here with all these people?
Yep.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
And
you got me fucked up.
Right, exactly. And the principal's zoned out about something, and the detectives got tired of the counselor talking. He's like, listen. We got you for this, and this. Now, like, you know, do you want to go to treatment or do you want to go back to juvie?
And what was this date? What was your sober date again? Say it one more time.
What was what?
The sober date again?
December 14th, 1989.
Okay.
So, and I was like, and I'm sitting down thinking for a minute, and I was like, I could go to treatment, and there might be girls there, and I could probably smoke cigarettes there, and I could be, and they just this whole, I was really doing like a little pros and cons in my head. When I looked at my mom, was like, I don't know what you're sitting still for. Like, you're obviously going to treatment, stupid. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so they sent me my first. I went out to the east side to a treatment center out there.
What was it called?
It was Lakeside. It was Lakeside Milam.
The adolescent one.
It was years ago, and it turned out I didn't have the right insurance to be there. So a few days later, they sent me to this place called Cascade Oaks down in Lacey. And Cascade Oaks. Yeah. And it was, and we were just some rebellious young kids from the city. You know what I mean? Yeah. And we had our whole treatment experience as these like young rebellious boys. Like it was a really interesting experience. And not a lot of the kids had experience being in like juvie before. And,
so you were kind of the tough guy.
It was.
Well, he was a city slicker.
It was a city kid. Yeah, I was definitely a city kid. I never really presented as being like the toughest kid in the room. Yeah. But being from the city with a bunch of like these, Lazy country boys. Dudes and these like cute girls who were from all over the place. You know what I mean? And I'm young and like it's like 17 and like I got sober at that point and ended up staying sober for 5 years. So wow. I got sober. I met a girl in there who I was like going to be my ride or die girlfriend forever. And they gave us a little contract because we were just so into each other. It was kind of obvious. Like we thought we were slick, but we were 17. It's like slick. And then on my last couple of days of treatment there, one of my partners came from Marshall. One of my like real dudes showed up. And right away, it was like nothing. It was, you know what I mean? It's like, he gets there and he's like, what's this bullshit going on? I was like, I know. I'm like, listen, let's get out of here. You know what I mean? And we just were just like immediately like, fuck this. And my counselor at the time was real sharp and she got wind of it and she called and they had a little family meeting and I came in and on the last day I was supposed to be there, they said, we're going to go ahead and extend you for another 30 days. And I got really mad and I kicked a hole in the wall and stormed off down and went to my room and I was so mad, but I'm just like, I stayed for another 30 days. And when I got out and I came back to the high school, here's why the counselor was slick. Because she sent 6 girls to treatment about 3 weeks before they sent us to treatment. So as we all started coming home, these girls, they made this class called this rap class, this little recovery class. It's why I really admire what you guys do with like high school level recovery work. It's because I had a taste of that when I was in high school. Yeah. Still at Marshall, still at the school for kids who got kicked out of other schools. And when I came home from there, these girls were all there already and they had time to like become cohesive and they were a little crew. And so all of us dudes started to come out one by one and we kind of became a little crew. And then we all became like this little crew. And there was like 15 of us and we were like the sober kids. And we were just like every other, like we were playing with like guns and playing with just doing like all the other like things everybody else at the school was doing, all the substances everybody was playing with. But for some reason, when we got out, we found this fellowship among us. Does it sound familiar? And we became friends, and we all fell in love with what we were doing together. And when I got out that time, I stayed, my first time, I stayed sober for 5 years.
That's beautiful.
I stayed sober into my 20s.
Planted that
A couple of those cats are sober to this day.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Since then?
to this day, a couple of those cats are still sober. Yeah, a couple of the men and a couple of the women.
Wow.
That'd be a wild like panel to hear from. Just
Wouldn't
what
that be
you guys,
interesting?
what you went through.
Yeah.
Because that's Bridges before, or that's sober recovery school before.
And some of those people, like we know from recovery fellowships now, you know what I mean? When the time is right, I'd be happy to, we could do some introductions. But yeah, some of those, there's a couple of people around who I went to high school with that were all still active in the rooms.
So then let's say you go 5 years and then how do you, man, are you going to meetings and you going to like 12-step program?
So sobriety for us as youngsters, we're like, we were young and at 17, we're youngsters. We're looking for, a good time. We want to meet girls. We want to do like all of these things that like everybody else wanted to do. It just so happened that we were, going to be sober. So for us, a lot of our social life, like we could go out. Our parents were cool with us going out at night because we were getting in a car and going to a meeting. You know what I mean? So we'd all click up, jump in the car because we're six, and I had ended up like back with my mom. And out of the apartment, whatever, like I'm back living with moms. And went to treatment, got out of treatment. I ended up in a halfway house going to Marshall. And then after that, I got the opportunity to move to a different school. So my social circle was already made with these people from this recovery stuff we were doing at the one school. They gave me an opportunity to go to a different high school, a high school called Middle College High School, where they took high school kids and gave them college level work. And it was on the Seattle Central campus up there. Mm-hmm. And their philosophy was these kids are just bored. And that's why they're fucking up all the time in school. That's why they're doing whatever they want in school because they go to the classes. And, and it wasn't really hard to tell even then that like the stuff we were reading in social studies was trash. And when I got to go to Middle College was like, again, like it felt like college level stuff for high school kids. So while I was like still in this like real tentative living with my mom again, early sobriety, going to meetings with my friends, like we're becoming more and more like family. We're doing everything together. We're hanging out. We're going to a lot of meetings. We're, going to dances. We're being real social. We're real about this fellowship and about hanging out for the meeting after the meeting. None of us is really doing anything in terms of recovery at all.
It's a fellowship piece that was keeping you there.
Period. Yeah. At about a year sober, my mom came to me and she's like, you need to move out. And I was just about 18 and I was like, what? And she looked at me and she goes, you're the same little asshole you always were. You just think you deserve a goddamn medal because you're sober now, because you don't drink. I'm sick of it. You can get out of here. Because at this point, that's how it was in my teenage life. It was like, you're going to stay, you're going to go. You're going to stay, you're going to go. So I left and I went to move. I left to live up north with a friend of mine who lived in Shoreline. And in fact, a few of us lived at his house, and his dad was like happy to have us at the house because we were all kind of staying sober and kind of taking care of each other in that way. So that's what we did. And then we went to join a particular group in Ballard that was a very kind of like by the book group. And they lined us up on the wall, all of us young dudes. It was like going to the army. They lined us up and like assigned us a sponsor. And we're like, this guy's going to be your sponsor. And I went through the steps and I had like an incredible experience with like, at like 18 years old was the first time I had ever experienced like being absolutely sprung off the experience of like being in recovery, and having my first experience with a spiritual experience. And they had such established ways of sponsoring, they had such there was like those, to this day, I still reference in meetings, some of the work that I did, my sponsor at the time was a guy named John P. And John P was this old native guy who was like a real, he was a real freak. Like he was real into like B movie horror movies, like The Toxic Avenger, and he was just into all this like really far out fringe stuff that I thought was really cool because I was kind of interested in that stuff too. Mm-hmm. And so we got really, really close. And then him and his wife were native and their son. And he was the first one, and they showed me like how they did these steps in their group. And the first thing he had me take a notepad for my first step. He's like, we're going to talk about powerlessness and unmanageability. Yeah. And I had this notebook, and I draw a line down the middle of the page. And every day I write powerless and unmanageable, and I number it. And I had to give 5 examples of powerlessness and 5 examples of unmanageability. So powerlessness is like, you see a crowd of people crowded around a payphone. This is the payphone era, right? They're not making like dinner reservations. You know what I mean? Like something's going on. And for me, it would be like, I would see a baggie in the street, a bottle cap, a liquor ad, any of these things, right? Things that would remind me that I was powerless. And it was so easy. Like, I could go from like my house to school, and by the time I got there, I saw plenty of examples. If I didn't see a whole bunch more at school, the other one that was tricky at first was the unmanageable one. 5 examples of things that didn't go my way today that I couldn't do anything about. And after doing that for about 3 weeks, I was pretty squirrely. You know what I mean? Like I'm looking at like all day long, I see examples of these things that remind me that like how much I think about drugs and alcohol. Yeah. And all day long, these things don't go my way, that I can't do anything about, are really bothering me. Like they're eating my lunch. You know what I mean? I don't like the way the shit feels. And after about 3 weeks, I went to him and I was like, he was like, how's the step work going? And I was like, not great. I don't like this. Like, I don't like the way I feel right now. And this is when in fishing, they call this setting the hook. You know what I mean? When you see the salmon's kind of biting on a little bit and you just get him, you know what I mean? Because the way he set the hook was this. He goes, yeah, you seem like you're really unhappy. I think it's about time we start talking about a higher power. And I was like, I'm 17. I'm like, okay, and he sent me off to, do this project. He said, I want you to write down on one side of a page everything that you think God is. And on the other side, I want you to write down everything you want God to be. And I was like, okay. And I wanted to, I'm like, I want to perform like this seems important. I want to do well for this dude. Like I want to do this well, And so I wrote down this stuff on one side, wrote down on the other. And I read the chapter about that addresses that in the book, We Agnostics. I read it like so many times that day waiting to meet with him. And I went and sat down and I slid that piece of paper over to him, and I was so proud of it. I had drawn a little border around it. I put a little sun at the bottom of it. Like I'm trying to make it fly. And he slid it over to the table. He picked it up and he looked at it, put it back on the table and slid it back to me. He said, that's cool. I was like, I know you didn't read it. You couldn't possibly have read it in the 0.5 seconds you looked at it. And he looked at me and he said, I don't care what your concept is. I only care that you have one. And my whole trip through the steps was like that. It was like doing the work with fucking Yoda. You know what I mean?
Right. You're getting the hook set all the time.
An experience you must have. Yeah, you know what I mean? Right. Yeah. And I was like, but by the time I had gotten to like amends, some of the stuff had really started to sink in, and I was so sprung off having like even a taste of what a spiritual experience was. I was really engaged in this stuff. And so at a year sober, we hadn't been doing anything in recovery and nothing had worked. Yeah. In fact, it had gotten worse, just like they say. We got to this group of people who all talked about how things get worse if you don't change. And we got a chance to do this work. And a lot of us stayed really close to that group. And again, had sponsors in it, started to get sponsees ourselves, had real relationships in this group. But this other thing kind of started happening for me, which was a bunch of us had moved into a house together. So there was a bunch of us young, sober dudes living in a house together. We had instruments downstairs, and all of us moved in and bought cereal and we were kids again, you know what I mean? We bought cereal and soda. One kid moved in and bought flour and butter and eggs, you know what I mean? The kid who was raised like that.
That could actually make something.
Yeah. Right. So when we were all out of food, he was making pancakes, you know what I mean? Yeah. And we're all being real cool to him.
So you're having this experience in the steps, and you're kind of getting into it. You've been sober for 5 years. Can you take us forward to when you kind of dropped out of that? And
I will tell you that I really clearly saw it coming. So at about 4 years sober, a couple of the homies started to move to the city. To start we were all up around kind of the north end, doing our thing, and a couple of the homies started to move down to get apartments on Capitol Hill. Mm-hmm. In fact, a couple of our friends did, and then I was one of the very next ones too. And I got a place up on Summit Ave, and it was 1992. I remember my rent was about $450 a month for this apartment, on the hill. And the Nasty Ness lived in the building next to me. Nasty Ness was a hip hop radio DJ who was like a real somebody to us kids from the town. This Filipino cat. And I heard him out in front of his friend. He was Nasty Ness Rodriguez. He had this real slick voice. And I heard him just talking randomly, like in the buzzer on his apartment or something. Hey, buzz me in. Or what, I heard this voice and I was like, oh shit, that's Nasty Ness. And I was real enamored with like moving to the city, living in the city. We were all kind of growing up around hip hop. And for me, I had always drawn and been a visual artist my whole life. Yeah. And I was really leaning into graffiti art. And I was really kind of starting to do this. And we're starting to hit the club. And we're we're literally about 21, 22. And suddenly all those things that my sponsor had been talking about with me about practicing these principles in all my affairs sounded like he was telling me to not do everything I was trying to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Suddenly in those moments, like all this recovery work started kind of sound like the lamest thing in the world. Yeah. And I wanted to, so I started talking to my sponsor a little less, drifted away from that a little bit, and just leaned more into like this life and lifestyle I was living on the hill. I was a young line cook in restaurants. And that to me also like a great place for young alcoholics and addicts. Really exciting, fast pace, really good for the ADHD because you're doing 10 things at a time all the time. The energy's real high. And I loved it. I felt so plugged into it. And I moved to another apartment up on Capitol Hill. And at about 5 years sober, I came home from work one night and I had my own little place, my own little apartment, 22 years old, up on First Hill. Finally, like I'm grown. I live in the city where I used to be a runaway. All these things. Like I felt really good about life in this moment. I came home one night and I had this toothache, and my tooth is bong 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 pounding. And I got up and like jogged in place, and my heart started beating a little faster, and the pain went away. And I was like, okay, then I laid down, and then it got painful again. And I went down and did a bunch of push-ups, and the pain went away. And I sat down on my bed and realized I was like, I'm not going to be able to keep this up all night. So the next day I went to Harborview and they gave me these like very mild pain pills, right? Like they weren't really doing the trick. I came home and I took a couple and the round came this down. I was going to have to lay down and deal with this, like feeling my pulse in my tooth thing again. And I was like, what am I doing? And I got up and I put my coat on and I went down to the little ShopRite market that used to be down there on First Hill. And I bought two 22-ounce, two tall boys of St. Ides. And I came home and I had a big stadium cup, like a big 32-ounce, like a 7-Eleven drink cup. Yeah. And I poured one of those beers in there and I tilted back and I had like, I ended up reading later about Dr. Bob, how Dr. Bob had the ability to open his throat and just take it to the head. And that's what I did with one of those bottles. And that's what I did with the next bottle. And I slept like a baby. Yep. I really did. I slept like a baby. I woke up the next day because I'm young. I woke up 22. I woke up, sprang up out the bed. I feel great. Great.
Yes,
then,
you do.
Then that same day on the way home from work, I stopped at that same store. I can't tell you why. I think you know why, but I bought myself a jug of Carlos Rossi Chablis. And with the jug with the little finger hole in it, what I mean? Man. And I went back up to the apartment. Now, all the homies are still sober. We go to shows, we go bowling. Yeah. Every now and then we might go to a meeting if we're feeling crazy, although that's a very rare occasion at this point. But we're all still tight. We go to house parties and dinner parties at each other's houses. Like we're just still together. Like all of us are still around each other. Now I have this secret. I drank and like, you know what I mean? I'm not really trying to tell everybody about it because like, these are my people, but like this whole thing is built on like, we're sober. And, I remember I went into my apartment and I had this little cupboard and I took out all the pots and pans and the floor. And I knew from when I moved in that the little floorboards in the cupboard came up, and I took up the boards and I put that jug of Carlos Rossi in there and I put it all back together, put the pots and pans in, closed the door and went and sat in my living room. And I was like, man, I live in a studio apartment by myself. What the fuck am I doing right now? Who am I trying to hide this jug from? It's story of my life. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we just kept going from there. And from there, I just, I started, and one of my friends looked at me and said, "I'm really curious about the secret life of Jason Vickers." And I was right, and I was like, "What do you mean?" Because I had developed this whole life of like, this is me by myself doing my thing. I don't want you to see it. I don't want you to know about it. I'm highly invested in Double Mint Gum and Visine. You know what I mean? Like, I really need you to not know, because the question is not whether or not I'm going to drink or get high. That's not a question. The only question is like, what am I going to do to make sure you don't know? That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that's the story of my life right there. At least in the active addiction. I mean, yeah, I just I like being alone. It's like an interesting thing, like the studio apartment thing. Like, to me, that was always like as long as I had my safe space to go to, and like be like the person that no one really like. There's this part of me that was always like, if you really knew who I really was, you probably wouldn't like me. So then I spent a lot of time out and about, but then there would always be this time to like rejuvenate and like almost like respawn and like turn like, okay, we gotta get the energy back to like go out there and put on a show. Cause like if you really did know,
it's so true,
you wouldn't like me.
I feel the same way. And that's why I mentioned earlier that like when I was a youngster, real little guy, and moved here from back east, that sense of being on the outside looking in, that sense of not belonging. By the time I was a teenager, I was really like kind of putting on a show in the world because I didn't know what to do. Like, it was important for me to like find a way for y'all to like take me in and wrap around and like for me to belong and feel like I'm at home. And I didn't know how to do that yet. And kids weren't very forgiving with that shit. You know what I mean? Like, you were either cool or you were whack or you were lame or whatever it was. And it was like, I tried so hard to stay in the light. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tried so hard until, to this day, like, with the therapist and with my sponsor, like, we're still trying to untie some of those knots from some of that stuff. You know,
100%.
It's real.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's lifelong. There's always another level you can get to with it too. You know what I mean?
Real.
Yeah.
So carrying those secrets now, like now I'm in with my people and like, and I'm trying to kind of play the role as best as I can. And, eventually it's kind of found out. Eventually, like, I was staying at a friend of mine's house and like dropped a weed pipe out of my pocket. You know what I mean? What's that? Oh, I'm holding it for somebody. Oh, you're holding it for somebody, huh? Just, it was just like, I tried my best to hide it until I kind of fumbled the bag a couple of times. And then I just tried less to hide it. A couple of the other people that I had been around had also like had relapses. So I just kind of started to like, we picked a couple of us from our little friend and they're like, well, I'll just go over here and kick it with so-and-so and such and such.
The relapser.
Yeah. Because now we're the little relapser.
Now we're talk shit about the sober people as we get loaded. Right. Yeah.
And I just kind of, that just began my, it was my first time realizing that like you can be one way, but once you go back to once you and we hear people mention it time and time again, like have to being sober for 5 years and I'm only 22 years old. And I think I kind of know a few things about a few things. I get back into the mix and in real short order, I'm kind of back in the same place.
Yeah. I think that's really a big piece to pick up on is like, you sound like a very intelligent, sophisticated kid at the time. That's just like, okay, so I got some sobriety under my belt, and now I'm going to take another run at it.
Yeah,
I'm going to take another run at it and see how it goes. So then, how long were you running until you get a hit again? Like as far as like another hit of sobriety. So if you can.
So for me, it was 5 years in, and then I had 5 years out, and in that 5 years out. The other thing I just always had the call of the wild in me, ever since I was young and ran away. It was like, for me, like now I write graffiti. Now I'm going to kind of do some other things. So for me now, it's like, now I have another reason to go downtown in the middle of the night and see what's happening.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now I'm walking. So now I'm walking the block and the alleys and the rooftops and the train yards from from midnight till it gets light out all the time. But being out there also walking around and catching tags. Is one thing. Walking around catching tags with like your little favorite little mixtape in and having a little blunt is a whole other ball game. And like I discovered that I liked it. You know what I mean? And And somewhere in that life, somewhere in that movement down around there, I say somewhere like it's vague. I actually remember very specifically the first time I tried it. I went to this house with this girl, and we were kind of playing around, and she pulled out a stem, and she wanted to take a hit. And I grew up watching cocaine and what it did to my family.
Yeah.
I grew up, I'm going to say that again. I grew up very clearly with a front row seat that I couldn't like turn away from and watch what cocaine did to my whole family.
Yeah.
Real bad. I had one uncle who was really like moving weight and who had ended up like locking himself in his closet with a brick and a Uzi. And the only person that could talk to him was my dad. And I'm 5 feet away. I'm like 9 years old. You know what I mean? Like I grew up around, I mean, these things were, and I only say that to say like, I had a real front row seat to like what people who had used these things, like what the consequences were. And none of that stuff came to my mind when I was sitting with that girl who I thought was cute, and she pulled out a stem and she put a little rock on it and wanted to get high. And I took my first little crack hit at maybe like 25, 26 years old, somewhere in that mix.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Some crack.
So here's what I'm telling you.
Crack. And then we'll get some.
What year was this?
Some drinks.
This was
Early
probably
90s?
this
Late 90s?
yeah, this is probably like
crack.
this is probably like I'm telling you, listen, probably like 95, 94, 95.
Okay.
And I'm in the middle of doing like wild graffiti missions. Also having the time of my life. You know what I mean? Like we're out here bombing mass transit. We're out here, you know, like we're just getting up. We're being creative with it. Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is like we're in an era, like our little my little crew, like the homies and I, like everybody's in this little creative renaissance. You know, we want to paint, we want to draw, we want to practice, we want to do these things. Also, like the homies are making beats, people are like everything, like all of these things that you might see in hip hop are happening in the in the one place at the one time, and it's beautiful. Like, everything's happening. You know what I mean? We're moving around from all these different parts of the city, all kinds of wild parties. The art is dope, you know. And in the middle of this, like, I went downtown, and once I'd had that taste, I still knew a lot of I knew a lot of the girls who had been sex workers and things like that. You know what I mean? So I would go. So it was, for me, it was like I would go down to Belltown and look for someone I knew, and you know, get a little something, and then get high, and like, you know, just go wherever the night would take you. Yeah. You know, and I started having experiences like that, and it went from like going through the night into the next day. You know what I mean? And like cocaine usually is, like I would have a little run or I'd have a little binge, and then be like mad ashamed about it.
Yeah.
You know, listen, like, you know, half these cats still think you don't do anything. You know what I mean?
Now you're doing
right.
crack,
and now you're smoking crack. Yeah, right. And right away, everything changes. Your relationship to substances, your relationship to like, you know, I did that thing a couple of times where it's like, you just seeing like, you know, I'm working as like a line cook, making like $7 an hour. And I'm like, I got $300 in the bank. You know what I mean? And it was like, and, it didn't go very well. And I ended up in a lot of situations, and very, very early on, where I would like go downtown to like, I had to figure out a lot of the culture kind of the hard way. You know what I mean? Because I had drank, I had smoked a lot of weed, I had used LSD and things of that nature and all these other things. But like, and my crack, right. My experience with cocaine and the way it ran through my family, my like was a little different than actually like being in the middle of the mixed downtown. Yeah. Like, you know, because I had sworn for the longest that I was never going to do that until one day I just did.
Isn't that wild when you swear you're not going to do something?
And then like before you did, no hesitation.
Yeah, right. And
no hesitation.
You're like, ooh, this is actually. I wonder.
Yeah,
and now I got this. Me to do it. And now it's, again, just like everything else. It's not about whether or not I'm going to do it. It's just, how can I do this and have you never know that I'm doing it? Man, so that's a wild line you got right there. I swear, man, it's like if I could just get as high as I want, doing what I want to do, and not have you know, that's heaven. That's where that was like the zone.
Yes.
If I could be in the zone, that's the zone. I define that as the zone where I was doing what I wanted to do, high as I wanted to be, and you had no fucking clue, and you weren't laughing, and you have no idea, and it's like almost like this, like the jig is up, right? I'm trying to make sure you don't know, and the minute, this is what happened for me, the minute that they found out that I was doing, you never. I wouldn't even fuck with you no more.
Yeah, exactly.
I was nowhere to be found with you because you knew. So then I can't hide. Like, you're gonna know.
Yeah.
So then I got to find somebody else to hang out with that does it, that I can play this game with.
Period.
Yep.
I can play. All right. So we're going to segue into, Jason's, well, you'll find out later in the episode what Jason does, but he'll explain a little bit right now. One of my dreams has always been to have an opportunity to have and share non-alcoholic drinks, but they weren't, I didn't want them to be like
Beer.
NA beer.
To emulate alcoholic drinks too much.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've had this dream for a while, and it's just wild to me that we're here doing this right now. And you even offered, even before I had talked about it, to bring your own syrup. So let's segue into it. Let's talk about it, man. What you got down here?
Okay, so first things first, my project is called Natongs Metsu, and in my people's traditional language, Natongs Metsu means feeding my cousins. Right? This is the term.
Yeah.
So by way of extension, being a person in recovery, as you can imagine, the concept of feeding your cousins can mean many things, right? So for me, primarily it's food. I'm a chef, I'm a caterer, and I make a few products that I hope people find interesting. You know what I mean? But Natongs Metsu can also mean like, a ride to detox or a 3 a.m. conversation with somebody who's struggling. You know what I mean? Yeah. But in order to support all of this stuff and make it all go, and it's a for-profit business. I'll be super clear about that. Like, this is what I do. This is my bread and butter. This is what I do to eat. You know what I mean? Take care of my little one and do all my other little things. So I say that to say, one of the things I love doing is making these drink concentrates. Yeah. I love making these little handmade sodas. I was in Brooklyn in the early 2000s, and I had made this syrup for a raspberry rosemary sorbet I was going to make. And the syrup was a little too much sugar in it and didn't set up. So I just left it in my fridge as a syrup. Didn't know what I was going to do with it. Yeah. We were living in Crown Heights, and we're sitting outside on the stoop on like a hot summer day. That's how the stories all start. And we're sitting and we're just out there chilling, and and it's just hot, unforgiving hot. Yeah. This East Coast heat and humidity. And I was like, it just came to me, and I was like, you know what? Hold on a minute. And I went upstairs and got cups just like this, hit some ice, you know what I mean? And then, and then I took the syrup and I went in and I put a little bubbles just like I'm about to do right now. And we went downstairs and we had the bougiest soda we had probably ever had in our lives. We're sitting with the corner boys are there. Everybody's interested in what we're doing. You know what I mean? What are you guys doing down there? And we all came down, and everybody, I'm like, pinkies out. We're all drinking our little raspberry rosemary sodas on the block. And it was a beautiful thing. So all these years later, when I started doing this project and I started doing this work, one of the most beautiful opportunities I've ever had is midway through my career as a chef, I got to lean back into culture, and I got to be introduced to all these different plants and plant medicines and flavors. And as a chef, that means like textures and building blocks and all these other things. And everything comes with everything, it carries its own stories, has its own medicinal properties. Everything comes from somewhere. Yeah. And that same park I used to walk through and sleep in and be in all the time, is now this breadbasket. There's this unbelievable amount of food and plant medicines in the most regular parks that we walk through every day. Lincoln Park, Discovery Park, Seward Park, they're a magical place now, and it's beautiful. I'm so grateful for that. Yeah. So with that thought in mind, what I'll tell you is this, I'm going to make a soda based on this flavor. It's my newest flavor. It's called Enchanted Forest. It's cedar and lime. So it starts with a walk in the woods. I go out and I harvest young cedar tips, and I make a simple syrup with lime juice and sugar. And then I add a bunch of these washed little young cedar tips, and I heat it up. I go through a little process. I get it hot. I steep it like a tea for a certain amount of time, and then I strain it out, and it has the cedar essence combines with the fruit juice to make this really, really beautiful flavor. They're great for all different kinds of things, but I started serving these at powwow because as a kid going to powwow, you would see endless amounts of Pepsi and hot dogs and potato chips and elders with diabetes. Right, this diet's not so popping for like this Eurocentric diet for a lot of different folks in this country. The aftermath of it is real serious health problems. So growing up, we wanted to see and like try to do something a little bit better. So now I'm proud to say you can go to a lot of the powwows and there'll be, other caterers, like shout out to the other Pacific Northwest indigenous caterers, like Live for Flavor or Native Soul Cuisine, people that do this stuff. But now you can go to that same powwow and you'll see like handmade traditional indigenous foods with like, it's like made with love and care. And you can still go get your little soda or your little whatever over there, but you can also get something that's like, you have the alternatives now. You have the choice to get something else, something that's real. So with that thought in mind, I wanted to make some of these things. And, so I do like flavors with like nettle and sweetgrass and sage, like a lot of these traditional plant medicines I've turned into flavors and we make drinks with them. So
what's one of your more popular ones?
One of the more popular ones, probably the Enchanted Forest is doing really well. It's brand new. But the one of the classics is this one's called Salish Style. This is cedar and tangerine. This is one of the very first ones that I started making with Natonks Metsu. The citrus and the cedar, when I was daydreaming about it, I was like, that's what it is.
Okay.
And a friend of mine who was also a cook, we were just talking about flavors and she was like, what about citrus and cedar? And I was like, I've been thinking the same damn thing. So one thing led to another, and this has been this has been my most classic flavor. So the way I prepare these is pretty straightforward. And if anybody's ever interested in trying these, this is how we do it. So I'm just going to add the syrup like so, just about so much. What a bartender might call 2 fingers worth, right? And then I'm going to top that up with
just a little bit of experience in this, brother.
Top it up with some bubbles. We're going to use this lovely Tahoe.
Yeah, shout out Tahoe water.
Shout out Tahoe water. This is some lovely stuff to work with for sure. I'm going to take this cup and then here we have so you can see we got the syrup on the bottom as it lightens up, but we're going to just pour it back and forth to mix it like this. And that is that's our Enchanted Forest.
Oh man,
this one's
cheers,
for you.
Man. I've never tried
Pete, that's
this
for you.
Let's go, baby.
Yep.
Come on, cheers.
Let's go.
Fellas.
Sober champs. Let's get it.
Sober champs.
Yes, sir.
All right, here we go.
All right.
First one.
Ooh.
Cedar.
You can
Cedar
taste
lime.
it.
Come
It's
on fire.
Hey, that's a lot better than an NA beer.
Is it? I don't know. I don't. Is this
is busting.
It's its own thing.
This is pretty good.
Thing.
It's its own thing.
So man, come on.
Yeah. Cedar and lime.
Did you Fredo? Did you have some? Come on.
What do you think, Fredo?
Hey. So
now you can see when it's like 85 degrees out.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
You're slamming it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
so
this
now
is
here's
good.
the question. At least when I so here's a hesitation, right?
Yeah.
I hear this. There's cedar in it. Like what the? Like in my mind, I'm not.
Like, is that toxic? Is it dangerous?
No, it's more of like I'm gonna like. How does it?
I'm not gonna like
have
it.
you ever heard of a Coca-Cola with cedar in it?
Right.
Hell no.
Exactly.
So then what are we doing here? Why is hey? You know what's crazy? It's like I took a little sip of it. I feel kind of like it like fired up.
Yeah.
I feel kind of like
Man, we could have this at the beginning,
right? Instead of wait, we didn't even have coffee, so
no, this is great.
Cedar is strong medicine. Cedar,
All right,
like
here we go.
like
Cedar,
if it will move something through your body. You know, if you're working on something. Also, because it is a strong medicine, I also always make sure and let people know, like, if you're pregnant, I suggest people steer clear. If you're pregnant or if you're nursing, because the medicine is real and the medicine is strong like that.
Is it intoxic? Like, what's the?
No, it's not. I would never say I consider it toxic.
Okay.
But the cedar, I mean, it's an activator. You know, it really like moves what's happening in your body right through you. You know what I mean? You're fighting cold. You're looking to wake up, looking for a little perk, looking for something like I mean, activating your organs is something that is a healthy way to tune in. And what I mean by that is like, we can consume alcohol. Like, I don't know if you guys are like me, if I drink or if I'm high or whatever, but like once I drink, I'm kind of like in my own head, in my own body, in my own situation. I like making drinks that do what we might call the opposite of drinking. I want to enhance our connections to each other. I want to have something interesting that like lights up our senses.
Yeah.
That kind of brings us, you know what I mean? Brings us into so making something that's special like this is important to me for a whole bunch of different reasons. I love spreading these medicines around. When I'm in the indigenous community, I'm working with stuff. I often tell people this is a chance for you to smudge your insides. You know what I mean? With a little plant medicine. Yeah, smudge your tummy.
Well, this is fire, bro. What do you think?
For real, I think it's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, what's crazy is like it's just it's beautiful to be in a situation where like, to me, this is new. This is an alternative to your soda. I go into 13 Coins. I go into a restaurant. I don't drink NA beer, and I tend to drink soda.
Yeah.
I tend to drink, my Shirley Temple
Black
or with black cherries, or the Roy Rogers with the black cherries, but there's something about it that really just I'm looking for something different. Yeah. And I think this could be a great alternative to be put into the community. And, who knows where it goes from here. But, man, I'm telling you, we had talked about it at the retreat. Like, to me, I've always thought of, like, having you be the person that pairs these drinks with the food. Yeah, like this food, this menu,
like a sommelier does with wine.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm tired of the wines taking all the credit, like having that, like, let's get some alternatives to these great dishes that we love to eat. Exactly. And so, I just don't think that wine has to always go with something. We can have other things that go with our menu items. And so, it's just I'm glad you came tonight with some samples of this.
I'm telling you, bro, a lovely seasoned up piece of salmon.
Right.
You know what I mean? And when what I try to offer of this, and I'll just speak on this a little bit, the philosophy that I use when working with most of these ingredients and products is I'm trying to bounce a dollar around in my community as many times as I can before it goes anywhere else, which means I'm buying my fish from an indigenous fisherman. You know what I mean? I'm doing this event tomorrow with fish that I'm proud to say came out of Tulalip Bay yesterday. You know what I mean? And it's like that and I'm going to rub it with a nettle pesto. And I harvested those nettles, up in the hills over in West Seattle. You see what I mean? And I try to build as much of that as possible into what I'm making. In the summer, the summer's the best. Summer's when it's sort of the most on and popping because there's just so many different things I can harvest from. So I'll take a drive over to the peninsula down south and then out to the west. And then by the time I'm done, I have this pile of things that I can use that are really wonderful. And I love doing that and making a meal, telling the story of each thing and then having it all on a plate and going, this is what I'm talking about right here.
Yep.
Man, magical, man. Yeah. I've always seen something so beautiful in you. There is something that when I have met you and I just see you, I think that, one day in my vision, you're just going to be a world known, chef, a world known, curator of what you're talking about. Like, it's just this beautiful option that has never been, to me, never been shown, never been exposed, never been given a chance to hit the main stage. And I think that, in reality, this is the main, this is what we got going. So today, this is the main stage.
Well, you're powerful, bro.
Yeah, and I appreciate it.
What I'll tell you is in so many ways, Native people and Native culture have been put on a shelf for a long time and kind of politely forgotten about, or maybe even not so politely, if you know what I mean. Yeah. It's really easy for people to kind of get it into their heads that these people in these cultures don't exist anymore. Yeah. Or if they do that for some reason they're somehow not relevant. And what I'm grateful is that there's a real moment happening now. There's a real renaissance. And so whether it's music, art, you know what I mean? Whether it's television and movies, there's a real moment where people are telling their stories right now. Mm-hmm. So it's a great time to step in and start telling stories about some of these things and kind of spreading this stuff around. Not only to stand up and say that we're here, but when we stand up and say that we're here as Indigenous people, we're saying that we have survived so many things and so much. We are the ones that remain. So, you better believe that I'm going to do whatever I can with what I can right now. I want to do it for the people who came before me, and I want to show all the babies in my family that this is what we can do, and we can lean into who we are and be proud and use making things with our products and like they say, and our way, and using our culture and our traditions to take care of each other in our community. It's worth it. So, I took a long road from literally being under the bridge, being in the shelter, to be able to be here. And I'm excited that we get to kind of tell those stories too, because, just like we talked about earlier about me having a recovery experience in high school and how it's so relatable to you. Every time we talk about something like this on a level that we can create or that we can agree on and that we can both relate to, we create a little pocket of space, a little place that you and I can climb into together. And now we can be a little more real with each other because we relate about something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh, I was out on that block too, or I had to go through that too, or I mean, whatever it was. Or when I was, 16, 17, I got introduced to a recovery community and found a home as a kid who just wanted to be accepted somewhere and brought in to the fold and like get a little bit of love. Like I found that,
Yep.
you know what I mean? And it changed the rest of the story forever. Because for me, even though I came into that and I had to take a whole other trip back into the world in all kinds of different ways, when it was time to come home, I came home and it felt like home. And there were people here from that era that are still here now. Yeah. That we get to be comrades now and we get to do this stuff side by side and we get to see each other way off in the happily ever after part of the story, and a lot of us didn't make it. So for those of us who did, it's really important. There's a special beauty to the fact that like we survived.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also it's like the giving away the gift of our survival. Like what all of that has come to like having an opportunity to be of service. Like this is being of service to me. I need, I'm just looking at this like, oh man, like what you're explaining is kind of like the nuts and bolts of what recovery really looks like. Yeah. You hit that bottom, but what's crazy is like there were some fun times in use. There were some fun times in the camaraderie and the interaction with others and like
hey, when it was working, it was the adventure of a lifetime.
It was the
on everything. It was the adventure of a lifetime. I promise you.
We were chasing that every time we were going out to get high. I swear. And so then it's just magical how you've taken this story and then now here you are with that. So thank you.
This shit is fire.
This shit is fire.
If any of you guys want to try
I need some other we need
we could go through the whole thing right now.
We need 12 of them as an options for like the monthly traditional
Listen,
options.
I'm looking forward to lacing you guys up and setting up a little something.
Yeah, come on, man. You know what it is.
If any of you guys at home are interested in checking this out, all of the links for Jason's drinks will be in the descriptions or the bios. Everything you can find it. We'll include all the links. Go and check Jason out. This shit is fire.
I'm honored, man. Thank you, fellas.
I'm almost done. I'm gonna need more, bro.
Listen, we might have to hop to another flavor. We got 3 flavors on deck here. So
yeah, hey, that's what's up.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys want to get back into it? All right.
Yep.
Why don't you relax? You want to relax?
Yeah. Do we want to clean up a little bit?
I'm cool with what it is.
Okay.
I just want you guys to relax, be able to chill.
I'm gonna pull this back and kind of sink back into the chair.
Yep. There we go.
And then I think I'm probably let me know, brother.
Damn, bro, you fucking killed it with that shit.
Thank you, bro.
Shit, I was sitting here.
Bro, I like this flavor.
Like, come on.
This one's hella good.
Oh man, that's the one that's calling my name.
That's our little purple drink.
That one's calling my name.
This one's
that looks like a. Oh, anyway, I can't wait till he uses other fruits too. To like, I got the cherry. I got the cherry.
So when did this one come out?
This one, this is in like the last 2 or 3 months. I've been really developing this. I just got the labels for the Enchanted Forest labels.
Yeah,
I'm real lucky. I work with a handful of people that are so good, man. I work with a designer who I talked to the designer a little bit about like who I was, my heritage, and a little bit about life, about being born back east and growing up here. So the waves, the water is this is a symbol of. So I'm a Nipmuc. I'm from Massachusetts. I'm from inland Massachusetts, meaning like I'm from the East Coast, but I'm kind of like we're lakes and rivers folks. You know what I mean? We come from around lakes and rivers. So these waves symbolize fresh water. Our people are known as the people of the fresh water. Of course, when I was young, we moved out here to the West and we grew up in a place where this beautiful cedar is. And so the cedar represents my upbringing in the Northwest.
Okay.
And cedar also, like in traditional culture here, cedar represents resilience and generosity. And the reason why generosity is important, and I'm going to attach this to one of the last things you just said about recovery, is in most of the tribal traditions around here, the Coast Salish culture, your wealth isn't measured in how much you ball out or what you have. Your wealth is measured in how much you can give away. Right. Like, so ceremonially, so many times in the course of a person's life, people get the opportunity to do a huge giveaway. And that's where so you show who you are by how much you can share around with people. Yeah. Kind of like that idea, right?
It's just fire.
Yeah.
That's filthy.
So much more important than like what I can accumulate is what I can give to people.
Well, I hope there's also a way for us in the future to continue to showcase some of the stuff you guys get to do.
We're buying
Man,
this.
thank you for that.
Yeah, we're buying this. Hey, look,
Listen, I
got you.
stay making syrup for a reason.
Look,
It's here for sure. Yeah.
You know, and one of the other options that you have within your business is like, I just, you know, I've heard about like your week or your what do you do?
So so not only am I a chef and a caterer, I take people on walks in the woods and kind of talk about what's important out here. I work with a lot of tribal communities with, for example, I work with Snoqualmie tribe, and I do regular lunches, teach classes, and do things like that for their elders program. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to do that. That has led to me having a relationship with folks like the Salish Lodge, so the resort and hotel out there. Yeah. So now these syrups are available in the gift shop at the Salish Lodge.
The Salish Lodge up on
right next to the waterfall. Right next to Snoqualmie Falls, yeah.
I've stayed there.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That
so
is
so now down in the gift shop, and I'm proud to say I'm one of the very first indigenous makers to have something in that shop because the Salish Lodge exists on tribal land. You know what I mean? It exists because of a relationship with the tribe. So through working with the elders there, they said, we basically, like, we have the Salish Lodge as well. We also have the casino. So we want to start talking about that. And one of the most exciting things for me was I wanted to see how it went with the Salish Lodge and the Snoqualmie people and take the opportunity to go and visit other tribal communities. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To go to Tulalip and go to Muckleshoot and go up to Swinomish and then go down to Cowlitz and of course go to Puyallup and go to Emerald Queen and talk about doing some of this stuff, because the idea of putting handmade indigenous products into some of these places just feels like the right way to go. I know Definitely. I'm not the only one doing it, but I think that what I'm doing right now is an interesting and innovative way to like spread this love and this kind of good medicine around in a good way.
100% agree.
So that's what we're doing, man.
Yeah,
that's what we're doing.
I'm doing what you're doing, man.
And thank you. I'm grateful that you like it. So
we're here to support.
So, but also, like, to answer your question thoroughly, I'm a chef and a caterer.
Yep.
And then I also curate a weekly meal prep. So every week, I make a couple of different types of meals, and share them around. It might be like smoked salmon cakes with a little, lemon dill aioli on some wild rice. It might be like a seasoned hearty, like buffalo stew. This time of year, I like to make it with lots of big pieces of squash and like hearty vegetables. You know what I mean? It's like something to keep you warm when it's cold out.
How many people does it feed? Does it depend? Or like,
so there's 16-ounce meals. So that means, like, if you're a dude like one of us, like you'll probably have a 16-ounce meal in one sitting. Mm. If you're a little smaller, you're a little older, or you're a little more sort of like careful and conscious about that, you might have maybe a half a meal. But there's 16 ounces. I deliver packages of 4, 5, or 6 once a week. We make them on Sundays, and then we drive them all over the city on Monday. Right now, we deliver from Redmond up to Edmonds, and I have clients sprinkled throughout. So if anybody's ever interested, again, like, the information will be there.
We'll include all of it.
Yeah, and then where do you prepare it at?
My kitchen is down in the south, and my kitchen is in Renton.
Okay, so you got to come by Tukwila to get.
Listen,
hey, look,
I'm just a couple minutes from South Center.
Yeah, I live right there. Okay, we'll get to it. All right.
Yeah.
All right, man. That was a great little break in the regularly scheduled program. So we were talking about how we got to that place where you had just as you got up, you were like, "Yo, I think we're right at the place where you were outside."
Yeah,
like right outside of this studio.
Right. Yeah,
and running around. And
exactly.
So, what take us to that place? Now, I think we had just gotten done with you're 5 years sober. Now you're actively running around. So what is that?
So I started having experiences with crack out here, and everything that comes with it. Meaning, like, for me, crack always came in sort of a binge, which would be followed by a whole bunch of kind of shame and regret after the fact. Because addiction is an unbelievable thing, man. Yeah. And it's interesting. And I heard somebody say in a meeting later on, alcohol kills in inches. You know what I mean? And crack kills in miles, because you go so far so fast.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, you might change your whole life in a weekend. And And I had some experience with that. I had some, and with the desperation and the intense hunger that comes from it, for nothing but more. And so anyway, I'll say that to say, I was 5 years sober, and in my next 5 years out using, I discovered a lot of harder substances. I had my first experience with heroin. I had all these experiences with crack, and the end of my career after that. In 2001 was very different. It was a lot uglier, you know what I mean? Because the cocaine was involved. I had ended up in a relationship with a woman who, a lot of us alcoholics are good at finding somebody who knows nothing about alcoholism, nothing about our ways, and convincing them to kind of let us in, and they don't find out until too late what's really kind of going on with us. And that is a thing that happened with this particular person. So in 2001, I was cooking, and we had just opened up. We had just opened up an establishment at the foot of the Space Needle, and we had all these incredible celebrations around it. And in the middle of that, I went up to a bar up the street called the 5 Point. And, so it was a place where a lot of us met, and a lot of us had all these particular habits, and somebody came up and handed me some powder. And was, congratulations on their opening the restaurant, this and that, and I put it in my pocket, and I went home and I used it when I was at home. But the problem was, it wasn't enough. Right. I went through it real quick and needed something else. So I went downtown and kind of ran the rest of the night into the next day doing that. And one thing led to another. And my partner found me in a real compromised situation using, and that was the end of that relationship. And this was, and
she had no idea.
She had no idea that was happening. She knew that I had some issues drinking. At this point, we had got into the we were really kind of talking a lot of negotiating about that. I was like swearing to her I wouldn't drink again, and then maybe if we were at a party and she was having a few, then it might be okay for me to have you. Next thing you know, we're back at doing what we were doing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Some experiences with pills, some experiences with, secret, like smoking weed to kind of hide it and mask it. But the thing is, like, every 5 or 6 weeks or so, I would have I would start a night. I would get off work. I would get in the car. I would buy a couple tall cans of beer and drink them in the car real quick. And once I had those and got a little bit loosened up,
anything can happen.
Well, now it's time to go find something else. You know what I mean? And so you take a drive up to Aurora, or you take a drive down to 3rd Avenue, or you take a drive down.
Take a drive.
Yeah, you take a drive and go get some stuff, and you're just going to go where the night takes you. Yeah. And for me, that oftentimes that was into the next day. And my then partner at the time caught me in using in a real compromising position that was real hard on her. And my secret life and my out loud life crashed headlong into each other in an instant. I was working for a celebrity chef in the city, kind of, and so was my partner, and we were just, we were really involved in every part of life together. And suddenly it was like, she had no idea I was smoking crack in her car. And so I went out and I continued to use for the rest of the night, and I picked up somebody to hang out with me and use with me. And I thought she was going to do what she always does, which is get up at about 8 a.m. and have her little morning routine and then go to work. That day, she was going to work a little early, and she got up at about 6. I wasn't done doing what I was doing, and I didn't want to be doing it on the street because I was kind of paranoid. So I pulled into the garage, closed our little garage door behind me, and me and this other person were sitting in the car using. Right in the middle of it, the garage door opens. And there she is. And at that moment, it's like the point in some movie where they pause it. This is where he knew he had fucked up. You know what I mean? It was like my secret life and my other life are both in the same pot now. Yeah. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go, and I really kind of wandered aimless for there. I had really considered kind of ending my life in that little period of time. And I was actually walking towards the Aurora Bridge, and I stopped in the middle of it, and I threw away all my paraphernalia, and I had run out of money, run out of resources, run out of everything, and bled it all dry. Because when she found out, I ran back to the city, and I emptied out and I was like, I'm going to go on the binge of all binges. And when that went shockingly fast and petered out with no exciting ending at the end, it just petered out with desperation. I went and got on a bus out to my dad's house, and my stepmom and my new little baby sisters were there, and she grabbed them up and took and got them in the car and took off because like she was, she didn't want them to see me in that particular way. And I sat with my dad until a couple of my friends came over, and I ended up going back to the hospital, going to treatment.
And what year was this?
This was 2001.
Okay.
I went to the same place that I had gone to treatment. It used to be called Cascade Oaks, and now it was called something else. And I went to treatment there as an adult. Same place. And when I came out of there, I went to live with a friend of mine, and I got really involved in a very because now I'd had experience in recovery. I had experience in AA, and when I came out of that hospital, I went looking for some of my old AA folks, and I was so delighted to see them and have them welcome me back with open arms. And I got a whole lot of love. And there was a little group down by Gasworks Park where my old sponsor, I found out my old sponsor was working at this group or running or like working, like they had this group going, and it was a good situation. So I came and joined the group and got active again. And I stayed sober for about 7.5 years. And that was the longest time I'd ever put together. And I had the experience of getting into the service structure and really like making myself at home in recovery and really incorporating it as a long-term part of my lifestyle again, in a little bit of a different place in my life. You know what I mean? So I wasn't in that like chaotic young place. I was in an older, slightly less chaotic place. And I stayed sober for a long time. I ended up with one of those stories that we hear about all the time about like ending up in a relationship. I ended up in a relationship that to me became more important than anything else that was going on. I found this person and in very alcoholic fashion, I thought this is like, no matter what, I want to be in this relationship. And my participation in recovery really fell off. And I focused all my energy on being with this person and what our new life was going to look like and who we were going to be and how that was going to go. And
was she in recovery?
No, she was not. She was not a person. She was a normie. She was a yoga teacher, and she was she was just kind of a normie, and she was an amazing, amazing person. She was Latina and Apache, and she was really, really interesting. She was lovely. She was a really powerful personality. Yeah. She was definitely the kind of person, if she felt a way about something, you definitely need to stay out of her way. And Apaches are Apache like that. And one thing led to another, and our relationship kind of ended up on the, kind of going a little rocky. And at one of the more difficult points of that, I moved away and went to live on a little island down in the Caribbean off the coast of Honduras called Roatan.
Wow. And this is after you guys ended things.
This is after we ended things. So in about 2007, I moved down to Roatan, and I'm living on this tropical island. And I'm like, it's a place where everybody really, really, really parties. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's very close to where cocaine is made. So the cocaine that's there is kind of different than you might ever see in the US. Yeah. It's a very beach bar culture. There are a lot of people that are learning to scuba dive. So there's a lot of that. There are a lot of people, looking for a romantic getaway. So there's a lot of that. There are all these different places in the world. There are, like great travel deals to come to Roatan. Cruise ships are coming through. It's a very popular place. And in the midst of that, I kind of set up shop, and I got there. When I first got there, I went to one meeting, and I had the experience of going to this meeting in another country, and it was very interesting. Culturally, it was very different than AA is in the United States. These guys would tell their stories, and in their stories, they would say things like, I used to drink, and I was really lost, and I was also listening to a lot of rock and roll. I was listening to the Doors and Pink Floyd. Like, they talked about that like it was as played a role as problematic as their drinking. Yeah, they'd be like, I was doing alcohol and cocaine and listening to rock music a lot, and everybody in the room would be like, oh boy, oh man, rock and roll. Ooh. And I'm sitting there like, what's going on here? And
but it was start ripping that here in the United States,
right? But what I'll tell you is, growing up in kitchens and in restaurants, I had put together some Spanish from that. It was the first time I'd ever gotten to tell my story completely in Espanol. And to this day, probably the only time that I've told my story completely in Spanish before. And those people were very polite and very patient with my little dirty restaurant line cook Spanish. But I spent the better part of a year there doing a whole bunch of relationship stuff. You know, I had another relationship that didn't go so well. And then that person that I was with before came back into my life. And when they left, I was devastated and I didn't have anywhere to go. And I hadn't been really sticking close to the things that kept me healthy. So when I was really kind of lost like that, I was lost like that. And she left. And the next day I ate everything in the house. The next day I was trying to watch as much TV as I could, you know, and the next day came along and it's the monsoon season that had started. So there was a lot of raining happening. It was a lot of like staying indoors. And I had a little bit of a cold on the third day. So it's close to 90 degrees every day down there. So like if you have a real stormy day and it gets down to like 75 degrees, everybody thinks they're going to die. And it's like frosty out. You know what I mean? Like everybody has to put on their
winter coats come out.
Everybody puts on their jumper to go outside and be like, oh, and I had found after living there for almost a year that I was acclimated like that. And I caught this cold. So when one of the people came to visit me, they were sober. And they showed up with a cold. So they had bought this cough syrup at the store. I think you know where I'm going with this. And then she had a spoonful of this cough syrup. And she said, this feels like, wow. And she never had any more again. But I never threw it away. It was just in the fridge. So I went over to it and was like, you know, I got this kind of scratchy. I got this scratchy throat. I don't feel so good. Yeah. You know, and I just sat down and waited for something to happen. And it sure did.
Yeah.
And it was a Sunday, and culturally it was a very Seventh-day Adventist island, so the stores didn't open until after religious services. So I had to wait till 3:00 in the afternoon. I went down, I bought myself 3 more bottles of that same syrup, and really got at it. And then once the sun went down, I went down to buy some weed. I bought some weed in a big wrapped up newspaper for like 500 lempiras. 500 lempiras was about $26 US at the time. And I shot the dude a 500 and he gave me this like football sized bundle of just like the most terrible weed. You know what I mean? Like just to like, you know, it took a bunch of that just to kind of, you know, feel kick something. Even after my like 7.5 years of not touching it, I was like, this is some bammer. But we
definitely need the cough syrup with it.
Exactly. And so and I went to the bar and started having cocktails until it got a little bit late and I heard my own voice and I was really, really deeply slurring my language. Now, being that far from home in a place where I'm by myself, being out in a club, identified as a person who has a couple dollars in their pocket, has this big bundle of weed. I was lucky. I was dressed in all black. And when I left, I walked home just off to the side of the road, not on the road. So all the cars going by didn't necessarily see me because, just because like I knew, like I had lived there for a long time at that point, and I understood that like that's how you get robbed. Yeah, it just, you know, that's what it was. So I made it home. When I left, I had stuffed that weed down my pants. I made it home. I don't really remember making it home, but I remember waking up the next day and my pants were on the floor and the whole inside of my pants was all the weed crumbs, right? Just stuck to the inside of my pants, like a candy coating. Yeah. And, but I woke up and I was like almost 8, you know, like over 7.5 years. And I just put it down and I don't feel any different. And I will tell you that I took a couple of days and kind of hung around my house, and I was still working and stuff at the time too. I was able to work down there being like cooking, and make enough money that I didn't have to work very often. Yeah. Right. And this is right around Christmas time. And a couple of days after she left, I took that drink. A couple of days after that, I got a call on New Year's Day from my brother-in-law that my mother had passed in her sleep. This is the New Year's Eve of 2007, 2008. In fact, she passed away in a hotel right across the street from where we are right now, the Pioneer Square Hotel. She went out with her girlfriends, had a couple drinks. She was 51, went home with her best friend, and they were up in the room. They would sit down, they read their John Grisham books, and they're hanging out talking, and they went to sleep. Wasn't even midnight. You know, they went to sleep for the night, and Sandy woke up and my mother had passed on in her rest. So I found that out down there, not but a couple of days after ending this relationship, having a relapse. My mom passed away. I gave away or sold everything that I had down there, and made my way back up to the U.S. I had to do it the hard. I just kind of go from country to country to country. I take these little short flights. You know, I had to go to El Salvador and Guatemala and go into Mexico and then finally into Texas, and then finally got up here you know, and I got off and I'm skinny and I'm real dark. I've been in 90-degree weather, even in the wintertime, the weather's the same. Sun comes up at 6:30, goes down at 6:30. It's about 90 degrees. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Came home and it was snow on the ground, you know, it's like January 2nd, you know, and things were just different, you know, and, my mom, after my mom passed, I actually came home. Nobody knew, of course, that I had picked up. So I came home and a friend of mine from the fellowship, from my old home group, shows up and he says, here's my house key. Here's my car key. He too was a cook. He was going away to cook on a tugboat for 3 months. He said, here's my house key. Here's my car key. They're yours. So I went and stayed in his spot and just holed up for a while. You know, I was drinking and kind of binge eating and just kind of like just doing whatever I could to bear because I was just shattered. I was just so much grief from all these different directions. Yeah. You know what I mean? I love this person and really thought this is like, I'm going to go all out for this. And it didn't work.
When it rains, it pours.
Right. And mom had so I was just really like between these layers of grief, I was just kind of trying to hide out. And eventually, like we put together a funeral for my mom, and eventually the time came for us to go and look at her will. And because my mom and I had such a rugged relationship, I wasn't, you know, at the time that she wrote the will must have been a time where we weren't really cool like that because I wasn't listed in the will. One of my cousins was listed, and my sister was listed as a beneficiary, and one of my cousins was listed as sort of an alternative. And my sister, you know, of course, made sure that I was like kind of part of the process. And my mother had a 401k and I received half of that. So, freshly relapsed.
Wow.
Oh, this
super shattered heart.
Recipe for disaster coming up. Jeez Louise.
A check for $77,774 comes in the mail.
Ring the bell right now. Holy shit.
I literally was like, tried sitting on my hands.
Look,
I made it.
I
made it 5 days. Yeah, I went to the bank. I talked to a banker. I made a special account. We did the thing. And I put it in there. And then on day 5, I was like, no. That's enough. And I went and got those keys and I got in that car. I was so eager to go out and do my thing. I went outside and got in the car. I drove up to Capitol Hill. I got to an ATM to get some money out and I realized I had left the house, not even in shoes. I was so hot to trot to relapse, get myself some cocaine. I left the house, just took off because I had a few to get myself loosened up. Yeah. It's like, I'm at the QFC on Broadway in my bare feet.
About to take $1,000 out from the ATM, but wait, you could probably only take 500 out. But anyway,
I mean, you might as well have been right next to me from the way. I mean, that's what it was. I went down to Belltown. I found some. You know, I found some crack. I found some people who wanted to party. I went and got a little hotel room up at the Marco Polo on Aurora and didn't come up for air for many days.
I got to time out. So when you said you weren't in the will, that would mean that how did you get half the 401k?
My mother, I was listed as a beneficiary in my mom's 401k.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was a separate thing.
All right, okay,
yeah,
all right.
So that's what it was.
How the fuck did you?
Yeah,
what finessing did you do? To your sister, your cousin, or what the guy?
And I'm grateful that my family definitely made sure that that we were included, that we were all the way taken care of. Yes.
Okay. But so you go on a few day run,
and a few day run turned into a little more than that. Turned into it really lasted low key for a long time. And I touched some parts of, you know, like, I took a little bit of that resource and used it to help my father. I put a little bit of it in these other places. And then I turned around and I was like, I need this. I deserve this. You know, like how we get ourselves convinced of these things. Yeah. And I just proceeded to run amok. In fact, I did that for a few months. And at the end of it, I moved to New York City. I still had a little chunk of it left. And I was like, you know, at the time I'm like, I want to do at least one thing that's kind of like dedicated to my mom. And I know my mom would have wanted me to go out and like live my life a little bit. Yeah. So I bought a ticket and moved in with some friends in New York. And I made a conscious choice when I was going to move to New York that I was going to leave my habit in Seattle. I was going to leave it here. Like Peter Pan, I'm going to snip my little shadow off and just go off somewhere else and be somebody else.
Yeah. Man, I'm going to shake this.
And I flew to New York and I moved in with some friends, some cats that I had grown up making art with here, and kind of were like real close. And we lived in Brooklyn, and we all rented this brownstone apartment together, and we had the time of our lives. And for, we were going to open up this place in Williamsburg called Kinfolk. And then it was going to be like a little bit of a club, have some clothing and retail stuff. It was going to have a little like rotating store where like small producers can come in and sell their stuff. And in the back, there was going to be a restaurant. And I spent a bunch of money and like got myself situated and like got myself some like made a life for myself, because I went there with like nothing in my pocket. Yeah. I had this money in my account, so I made myself a little comfortable. And I started working on developing some ideas and some stuff for this thing. But at the same time, I met another woman and got all kind of caught up in that. And, I was in New York City. Part of why I wanted to move to New York City and be there, I just wanted to kind of like fall into the loud white noise of the city. Like there's so much going on here. There's so much happening here that I'm going to be so busy doing stuff. Yeah. It's that I don't have to think about myself and my grief and all these things. Like, I remember so conscientiously wanting to do that I was just in New York, and I would just get up in the morning and go out into the world and get up and go get on the train and just go somewhere and get lost and spend the rest of the day making my way back to somewhere where I knew where I was. Yeah. And it was an incredible experience. I don't regret it, but I know that my motivation for it was quite literally to like keep myself sane, because I was so sad, and I didn't feel any better because I had been medicating with cocaine and alcohol. Yeah. So by the time I got to this place where I was like, went to the city, like no healing had happened. Yeah. Right. And I met this woman, and we started, I knew her from Seattle AA a little bit. And she worked in high fashion in New York, and we started dating, and we started going to like some meetings every here and there. And she was kind of interested in being sober. We had both been sober before. Of course, nobody knew about my little secret using career at the time. So, and then one day she was like, let's have a little bit of wine. And I was like, yeah, let's do. And she did that once or twice and didn't do it anymore. I did that once or twice and kept doing it. I don't know how, through some miracle, I didn't touch any cocaine in New York City. Mm-hmm. 5 months into dating this girl, the day that Obama got elected for the first time, she asked me to come and visit her. So I took a train. She lived up in right near Spanish Harlem, right at the top end of Central Park, 105th and Central Park West. You could like throw a rock into the park. And I came over, and she informed me that she was pregnant and that she wanted to have that child. And I spent a couple of days talking to people about it, talking to my friends about it. And I had gotten these like a variety of perspective from my friends about it. And, I was thinking about whether or not I should leave New York City. And we were all engaged in this. Like, we were, with my friends, we were working on this project that to them was like the project of a lifetime, to make this place, this club, like, and to really bring this situation to life. And at the 11th hour, right before it was going to happen, I left, and I made a decision that I was going to go and be a dad. And I gathered up my stuff, and I moved out of the house, and they were really like devastated. Didn't even know what to say. And we got in the car and we moved up to Massachusetts. I'm going to tell you that 6 months later, they opened Kinfolk, and that 1 year later, the person they did find to do the kitchen, Kinfolk got one of the 10 best new restaurants in America. And it got this incredible shine. They really blew up. They started selling these incredible clothing, and the creative things that was happening, like their clothing, the artwork, like the events they were throwing, like the clubs, the DJ, like all the, like it was happening. I moved to a little town in Massachusetts, and I got there, and it was like literally like 9 feet of snow, and it was like The Shining. It was like dead silent, like you couldn't hear anything because it was so quiet from the snow, that muffled sound. And I lived in I tried to sort of like wedge myself into a situation. I was like, because we have to do this, we're going to be a happy family. And it never worked. We were never really sort of happy like that. My daughter's mom and I work unbelievably better as people who were like, friends. And that's only after a lot of healing and amends and therapy and things like that. I'm grateful to say we have a great relationship today. But at the time it was not that.
How old's your daughter?
My daughter's 16.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
And where does she live?
She lives in Portland with her mom.
Okay.
They just got back from a trip to Japan.
Oh wow.
They just went and it was like and my daughter's like a young, like she's an anime cosplay enthusiast. She's so creative and she's such a cool ass kid. Like I look at her and go, how do we do that? But they just got back from her, like, like living this beautiful dream of like going to Japan and like moving around and kind of being there. And I'll get to hang out with them next weekend and kind of talk about it in person, which is cool. But so I say that to say when I moved to Massachusetts, things weren't going so well. I was still drinking and just really not happy and not presenting as a happy person to like the people in my family, and for that reason, it wasn't the best experience. And then we decided to move back to the Pacific Northwest and we moved back here. And again, like I still kind of low key brought my habit with me.
Yeah.
And here's what I'll say is for the next few years, like, I was doing a lot of using, drinking, like this pattern really continued kind of undercover. And, in about 2012, a friend of mine came to me and told me that his mother was a well-known author. And he came to me and said his mother had this piece of money that she wanted to use to help invest in something, and that he wanted to do, because we had worked together so much and we had had such a great creative experience as cooks together. He's like, I want to do something with you like this. And like, let's talk about it. And we decided to open up a food truck. So we opened up a food truck that we were doing Middle Eastern food because it was something that just interested us. So we were doing Persian food, Turkish, Moroccan, and Egyptian food. The truck was called Fez, F-E-Z, Fez, like a Moroccan Fez. And, it started, we worked on it so hard. We put our, we got our truck and we did so much work and we opened it and we got a really incredibly positive response. People were loving the food, loving the work, loving the things that we were doing. And, the business started to really prosper and really do well. And in the midst of that, I had been kind of intermittently still doing my little like middle of the night cocaine routine. Every 6 weeks or so, I'd still have a little binge and everything that went with it. In the midst of that, I met somebody and they pulled out a big bag of meth. And I would love to tell you that they pulled out a bubble, but they didn't pull out a bubble. They pulled out a couple of needles. And they were like, are you down? And I was like, at the time, my outside life had gotten really big. It looked really big. I mean, it looked really good. Like it looked like we were kind of doing these really cool, incredible things, which we were doing. But my internal life was fully falling apart. I had stopped taking care of myself so long ago, and I had a whole bunch of really terrible habits around like addiction and using and food addiction and sex addiction and all these other things that were like what was really happening. And in the middle of all that, I had this first taste of meth with this person, and within about 2 weeks, my co-owner pulled me out of the kitchen one day because I started using every day, all the time, just like I had been working my way up to this, and I had such a powerful honeymoon with meth. I loved it, and my co-business owner put me in the car and drove me home and was like, "You can't be here like this. You're scaring everybody." And I had found a little Bonnie and Clyde partner to use with and get money with and do all these other things with. And when that happened and I got sent home from that, I completely went on the run from my family. I leaned into the substance. I leaned into the person that I was with using. I leaned into everything to do to get it. At 41 years old, I started leaning back into this world that I hadn't touched in a long time of being out in the street and like being around this stuff. I started spending a lot of time downtown again, like, trying to get some money, get something together, just because I lost access to the money through the business. I lost access to all of those things. I started doing a bunch of things that kind of made it, I felt anyway, impossible to go around all the people I knew. So I literally just leaned, like at 41 years old, just like I did when I was almost 14, I just fell back into the street like that.
It's funny how that cycle just continues to repeat.
Man,
as many times as you remove.
I identified it as a play. I really identified it as like right out. I'm saying right out this window. I identified this place as like, this is the place where, like, if they won't accept me up here, there's always a place for me down here.
Yeah.
Right. It's almost like that. you have this hidden like place to go.
Yeah.
Like if all of this fails,
That's
or
right.
if I hit the failure button, or if I hit the eject button, or whatever I do, I have this reservation right in here. I'm gonna knock on that door and I'm gonna go and visit that place. And it seems like this is where you were comfortable at.
I promise you, it's what keeps me active today.
Yeah.
You know, like I've run this experiment enough times as like we've talked about getting sober, relapsing, getting sober for long periods of time and going back out and going. And when I go back out, the stakes get so much higher so fast.
Yeah. I don't think
Right back in the street, right back in the alley, right back in the dumpster, right back in the shelter, right back in the jail cell, right back in the penitentiary.
Yeah. I don't know if we've had a guest on here with this type of story where, today we can say that you're sober. Like, you know what I'm saying? Today, and then and the things that you've been creating.
Brother, I promise you, 2 doors down is the Bread of Life mission. And I meant what I said. Like I was really at the Bread of Life mission. I was really at the UGM, like that, like the little oatmeal. Like you would get to the Union Gospel Mission at 6:45 in the morning, and they'd let you in. And everybody's kind of like in their real unwashed, like we're raw off the street. The bathroom in that place is one of the most unbelievable experiences that I've ever had in my life. Unbelievable. And it would be like 25 people in that bathroom. All had not seen a bathroom for a very long time. And then at about 7 o'clock, they brought out the coffee, and you could have a cup of coffee, and then they would give a sermon. And then you would get to line up at about 7:30, and you go into the main room, and they would serve you this oatmeal that to this day, I could kiss whoever made that oatmeal. It was saving lives with the bowl of oatmeal. And they'd have these big bins of donated bagels, and you fill up your pockets with bagels and apples. Because I wasn't eating nowhere else, and I was using meth, and like I would do a hit, and I would look at everybody and be like, I'd look around and be like, I gotta go, and I would leave, and I would walk. If I got high in Burien, I'd walk from Burien to White Center, back to Burien, back to White Center, all the way downtown, and then go find somewhere to get money and do it again. And I did that, and my life deteriorated in very short order. I went, let me put it this way. I started using, I was using with this woman that I was with. We ended up going to Texas because her family lived in Texas, and they weren't so concerned about our meth use. And we went down there, and I was much older than her. I got there, and the family welcomed me with open arms right out of the gate. My ability to cook landed me a job as a chef at the country club there. Fully brought my addiction with me. My meth addiction was in full bloom, and all those things that cats in the street do here to get money, they were doing down there. And we were driving out in the middle of the night in the desert and stripping all the metal off of oil derricks, things that will really get you killed, and coming back and selling the scrap metal, things like this all the time. Big piles of metal. We would like pour gas on them and burn them in the backyard to get all the stuff off them. And I ended up, I had this job as a chef at the country club. Plus we were doing all these licks on the side. I had the first time in my life an experience of like having too much of what I was as a cocaine addict, as I had spent so much time in addiction, desperately chasing crumbs. And now I was in a situation where I was like receiving much larger amounts of substances. And too much of anything as we know as addicts, like this, it just didn't end well. The person that I was with went like this. After 6 months of intensive use and the lifestyle that went with it and the cast of characters that went with it, I came home one night, and we had been using so much for so long. My girl had yet another psychotic episode. And she was she had broken all the cell phones in the house and taken them apart. She tried to stab me with a chef knife. And once I kind of subdued her from that, she ran outside. And she was dressed in an unbelievable outfit, the kind of thing that only happens after using a lot of meth. And you start thinking like you're little Lord Fauntleroy, like you're going to dress in robes, and you're just out there from too much using. And her mom showed up, and her mom was very mad at me for not physically checking her. She left with her mom. I stayed home and used and went back to work and continued to do what I was doing. 3 days later, she called me, and I said, hey, what are you doing? She said, I'm sitting in the car. And I said, where are you? She said, I'm in Chicago. I'm in Texas. Our house is in Texas. We got our little fight in Texas. 3 days later, she's in Chicago. The person who was her pimp had sent his sister to pick her up and brought her to Chicago. And now they were like working, doing these like robberies in Chicago. And she told me that she wanted to like get out of it and try to escape. So I called a friend of mine who had a restaurant, a chef who had a restaurant in Chicago, and arranged for her to go there, go to the restaurant, go out the back door, get in a van and go and we managed, like we got her on her little escape. She, I think, became an informant at that point, and then they put her on a bus back to Seattle. I'm still in Texas. I leave the job. I got myself a little severance package from the job without asking. And I left and I turned that into some substances, and I went and stayed in a little motel in the desert for like 6 days and just used as much as I could use without, you know what I mean? Like to the edge of like really having some problems. And I finally called a friend of mine at the end of that, and he got me a plane ticket, and I came back up here to Washington. I went to stay with my uncle on a little island called Anderson Island down south, the southernmost island in the Puget Sound. She was already here after me being at my uncle. Like the plan was to get me into treatment. So now I'm on my uncle's property, chopping wood, hauling water, literally like doing like road work with him. He's like real heavy landscaping work, like cutting wood, doing all these things. And my uncle's just biding his time. Like they're just hanging out until the treatment center calls and they're going to send me off to treatment. Meanwhile, they got me in the woods. They think I'm like, we're just wholesome out here. We're cool. No access to anything. Our old dealer drops off the girl at the ferry terminal. She takes a ferry out to see me. She shows up and she's got one needle that's like loaded with like meth, like one really big dose of meth. And I was so eager to do it. I literally broke the needle trying to set up the shot. It had been like 2 weeks without using, and just the anticipation of it alone had me shaking. Like I was so anticipating what was going to, my heart was already racing. I was already sweating.
Are you already high?
No,
just meaning like,
I was already like there.
You're in the zone.
Yeah, I haven't eaten solid food. I've been having wholesome conversations with my uncle. I've been like back in the family mix. And now Sadie's there. I stole my uncle's Jaguar and drove it down. Fuck. He had this, he's kind of a collector, and he had this Jaguar like dusty, like way in the back of the garage. And I took it to drive down to pick her up without him knowing, and came back. And I didn't know what to do at the time. So I kept her. We made a living space, and my uncle had a couple of shipping containers out in the woods behind his house. We made a living space for her in this shipping container, and she lived there secretly for a week. And we used slowly but surely all that meth, and hung out and had all our little time there. And at the end of it, everything fell apart, and my uncle found out, and they lost it, and they put her and I in the back of a container truck. You know, like a U-Haul truck, and they shut the door. They drove us down to the ferry dock and opened it up. And my uncle handed me $40, and he said, "I want you off this island. I don't ever want to see you here again." And I took that $40, and we walked in the ferry, and he sat there in the car and waited till the ferry boat left to make sure we were on that boat. And then we got off the boat, and we were on the other side. We got on a bus to Lakewood, and now we were officially homeless, back in the mix in Lakewood. And I will tell you that for the first, I went on I had developed the ability in an earlier part of life to shoplift a lot. And I went to, so we ended up in an abandoned house, and this is how this goes, right? Now we're living in an abandoned house in Lakewood, and I'm shoplifting progressively through the higher end, like the lower to higher end stores, at Lakewood Town Center. And at the time, like the interesting thing about meth is like meth, made me so excited and passionate to do that. I was so excited to just like that we were back in the life again, you know, that we were back around these people in the street that were like playing with these drugs, and in a way that like wasn't, you know, like it wasn't safe, and like don't slip, and like, you know, just like, but at the time we're in the very bottom of the barrel of this stuff. You know, we had gone from like sleeping in one of the sheds that they use as a display shed at the Home Depot and getting kicked out of that to getting into this abandoned house. And I loaded it up with goods, and valuables that I had been collecting through there. So now we had all these clothes, we had all this stuff that I had collected from the mall. We went over to a drugstore in the area. I walked in and found a wallet. I found a wallet on a counter, and I opened up the wallet, and there was an ID in it, and there was a bunch of credit cards in it, and I took it, and I went immediately down the street, and I went to the Target, and I bought about $800 worth of stuff. And then I went to the Mervyn's, and I got like another $800 worth of stuff. And the thing I got at the Mervyn's, I got a bunch of luggage. So now we're walking down the street, but the timing wasn't right. Like the person I was with was like coming down, and she was getting real angry and like in a real foul mood. And even though I had just come up and we had these 2 shopping carts, ridiculous, walking down the back streets in Lakewood, piled with brand new stuff. And she loses her temper. She's fighting. She's cussing. She's spitting. She's like taking swings at me. And I took this Madden game out. I bought a bunch of video games. I bought a bunch of stuff I knew that dealers liked. You know what I mean? And then a bunch of stuff for us.
So you were gonna really play some Madden, right?
Exactly. And she was like, and she's shoving me and she's screaming and she's like spitting at me. And I took this Madden game and I reached back with it. And she fell down, like she fell down, like I had
hit her,
done something crazy. Yeah. And I'm like looking around because I'm like, this is not good. She's screaming now, and I have again the 2 shopping carts. I look over and there's a bus driver watching us and goes. There's a woman who's crossing the crosswalk. You know, when you have been using and you're paranoid, like you start to see all these things and you're just like. And we went back behind this gas station into a little corral where the dumpsters are, and Stat's still down there. Until the Lakewood police came, and Lakewood police came in like the cavalry, like 4 cars, guns out. A cop had gotten shot in a donut shop in Lakewood, like 20 or like years and years ago now. But Lakewood was known for like their cops being like very sort of heavy handed like that. So they showed up and they booked us, and they found those receipts in my wallet, by God, and they found that the credit cards, and I got my first felony. I got my first identity theft charge, and we got a no contact order. And they took me down and booked me into Pierce County Jail. And that started a long string of like, I lost, I mean, not, of course I lost all those things, but I lost all my belongings. I mean, for the next few years, I was just in and out of county jails. My life was reduced to like, you know, if I could get a backpack at a Goodwill and fill it up with stuff, I would kind of run around with that for a few days until, you know, every 3 days you're going to fall out. Your backpack's going to get stolen. And I was quite just literally like an unhoused person in tents under the tarps in all those places, you know, doing what I could to use, things had of course fallen apart with the person I was with. And there was, you know, there's plenty of stuff around that, but I stayed like that for a couple of years. Just really all the way out there, all the way off the map. If I saw anybody I knew, I would immediately run. My lifestyle at the time was I would go from city to city, neighborhood to neighborhood. For about 3 days, I would show up. I'd look around for a way to make some money, make the money, use some reason would pop up. Why now I got to get out of here now. You know what I mean? You met the wrong person, you did the wrong thing, like you got whatever it was. But I would do that, and I would go like Linwood, and then I would go to Olympia, and then I would go to Everett, and then I would go to West Seattle, and then I would go to Ballard, and then I would go to Kirkland. Do you see what I mean? And I would really do this. So now as a person in recovery, that's what I mean. Is like every neighborhood, like
you've been to. I
have a memory of like, or an experience somewhere like that. Yeah. So I say that to say, like, I rolled around like that until about 2016. In 2016, I woke up one day after a 6-day run underneath a tree that grows right underneath the sign at the Dick's on Broadway. Fell asleep at the foot of the tree in front of Dick's on Broadway. And I woke up there.
Still there.
Yep. I woke up there on November 23rd, and I had a suitcase full of stuff that I was going to take to a Russian guy up in Aurora who was known for like buying things and giving you 25%. Anything that had a tag on it, he would buy. He didn't even really care what it was. And so I knew I had a way to get money for the day. I woke up next to somebody who was a heroin addict. I was not, but I woke up to somebody who was a heroin addict, and I went down to the Seattle Central bathrooms where I got into high school to wash up in the bathroom, and I came back and she was gone and the suitcase was gone. And I didn't even care. And I went down to the QFC and I got a rotisserie chicken. I got a loaf of Italian bread. I got a box of Cocoa Pebbles, and I got a jug of chocolate milk, and I went and I ate all of those things. And then it was time to sleep. It had been, a really long time. and I went over to Hot Mama's Pizza, and right behind Hot Mama's Pizza, there's the Seattle Central parking garage there. And I went back there and I laid down on the rubber mat outside the door with a couple pieces of cardboard. I was just that dead exhausted, and I didn't have anything on me. Usually, like if you fell asleep like that out somewhere downtown, you'd wake up and someone had run through your pockets or something would happen. And there was a bunch of like unhoused kids who were really cool and generous and like gave me a blanket and kind of, you know, like, and I fell asleep and I woke up at about 3 a.m. and they were all gone. And these 2 cops pulled into the parking garage, and they didn't really want to do anything. They kind of got on the loudspeaker and they're like, "The garage is closed. You're not supposed to be in here. Please leave the garage." And I just sat there. It just sat there. Yeah. And they slowly drove around, and they said it a couple times. They're like, "Please, like, leave the garage." And they pulled up to me and they got out, and I just looked at them and I was like, they're like, "What are you doing, man?" I said, "My name's Jason Vickers. My DOC number is 337645. And I've been on the run with felony warrants for a long time." And they're like, "Oh, stand up." I'm waiting, you know, for me, it's like the crescendo of a movie. I'm waiting for like the violins and the music. And they were just like, "Oh, okay, stand up, turn around." They turned me around, booked me real quick, took me downtown. I went up to 9 South, Lower D, lay down on the little blue mat on the concrete slab. And I slept like I've slept the deepest sleep I might have ever slept in my life, man. And I knew they were going to revoke my sentencing alternative. And I knew all those things were going to happen. And they did. And they sent me to prison. So that for the first time in my life, I went away to the penitentiary. Now, when I was a little boy, I had 2 like deep-seated fears because of what I had observed happen to the men around me on both sides of my family. One was that I would grow up and become a hobo or a bum because I wouldn't figure out how to live as an adult. And the second was that I would end up locked in a prison somewhere. And now those 2 things had happened. And I got to Shelton. And I went into the R's and went into R3, and I have a couple of uncles who have been incarcerated for about 30 years now, and I had the same last so people knew, kind of recognized by the last name. And someone asked me, this kid in the next cell named Buckshot asked me about it, and I said, "That's who I am." And he goes, "Oh yeah, your uncle's cool. Your uncle's the person who taught me how to do burpees," and you know, just like this whole thing, and I'm like my first day like in prison. And I'm like, you know, I've never been here before. I'm in my 40s. And he asked me to do a piece of art for him. When I was locked up, my hustle was always making art, you know, drawing and stuff. And I made him this envelope, and he paid me with a stick and a match. A stick is about like the tiniest crumb of weed you can imagine, rolled into dust and rolled up in a little piece of paper, like a page from the Bible. And then what this guy had that really stood out is he had a match and a striker, the little sandpaper striker. And where did you get that? Like, yeah. Can you imagine what happened to get that into the prison? You know what I mean? Right. And he gave that to me, and I put it in my shoe. And the next day I went with this big Hawaiian dude and this big Samoan dude to play volleyball. And I came back afterwards, and I didn't keep it in my shoe anymore because I was going to sweat and I didn't want to mess it up. So I put it in the Bible and hid it in there. And the cops came and kind of tossed all the cells the next day, and they found it. And they took me in and kind of did an investigation about it and asked me a bunch of questions, and I didn't say anything. When you get to prison, they give you about 56 points, and they say, "Don't mess this up." These 56 points are like this is like, it's your sort of like behavioral tracker. So on my 6th day in prison, my first time ever in prison, I had this hearing, and I lost 20 points for the stick, and I lost 20 points for the match. This means your custody level is changing. I came in there like minimum security. I came in there like as a bail jump on a forgery. Never a violent crime. Like, I didn't come in there for the crime of the century. You know what I mean? We might have thought we were Bonnie and Clyde, but we were like end user addicts. We weren't ballers. We weren't doing none of that stuff. And being that, like, I definitely existed sort of at the bottom of the ladder in that way. Like, I was an addict and a hungry addict at that. So when I got, I say that to say, like, when I got there and I went in to talk to the guy, and he turned off his recorder. He went to see, we'll record the session, and we're gonna do an investigation about the stick in the match. And about 2 minutes into it, he turned it off and he goes, "You think you're pretty fucking slick, don't you?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I've been doing this job for 29 years. I know you brought that shit in from the street. And if you tell me you didn't, I'm going to fuck you up." And I was like, I'm not sure what to tell you, bro. And he walked out into the lobby afterwards. So he turned the recorder back on and said, I'm going to give you 45 days of cell restriction and do this and do that and do this and do that. And we're going to change your custody level to medium custody. And what I didn't know then was that like, you know, God was kind of bringing everything together in the way it was supposed to come together, you know, and, I ended up going to, I did 45 days of cell confinement where I realized like I started drawing again, and I couldn't tell you why, but like for some reason, like my ability to draw like had not diminished. And I'm drawing with a little golf pencil on a piece of like paper bag, brown paper. Anyway, I say that to say, they sent me to Walla Walla to medium custody. I get to Walla Walla in medium custody, and eventually I can like send a kite and ask for permission to go to an AA meeting, which is what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I knew when I turned myself in, I was like, I'm done, man.
Yeah.
I got to be done somehow. I'm so exhausted. My spirit's exhausted. And I went to a meeting, and there was a guy in there named Hobbit. And Hobbit brought me to the back of the room, and there was a table in the back, and there were 3 boxes. And there was one box had a big book, one box had a 12 and 12, and one box had a daily reflections. And he gave me one of each of them. And he said, you can take these back to your house. These are for you. And that's where I started what is now 9 years. So what is approaching 9 years.
So what does your life kind of look like today? How has it changed? How do you feel today? What are some of the things you get to do today? When
I came out of prison, I ended up going to Port Angeles up on the peninsula, because it wasn't here. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'd come back to all the things the situation I had left myself here. I went to a new town and got to start as a person without all that baggage. And it was a small town with a big recovery community. And I'm so grateful that I found a home group there. And I moved into an Oxford house eventually after the relationship didn't work out. And I found lots of sponsorship and mentorship there. And after about a year and a half of that, I was given the opportunity to move back to Seattle. And I moved back and I got active in the Weld program. Yeah. And I started as a member / house manager at a little house in Ballard. And
Ron. Big Ron. Shout out Ron.
Shout out Ron. Big up Ron H. I love you, boy. Before there was a Ron doing what he does for Weld.
Yeah, I heard you had to teach Ron.
I did. I was doing the job. That's right. So we're in the men's sober living, and we're moving around from house to city. You know, Weld has a really interesting philosophy where they would take these houses that were waiting to be demolished, like they were waiting for the permits to happen, and notorious place for squatters and things like that. And they would put us formerly incarcerated, now sober people in these houses to keep the house safe, maintained until it was time for it to be torn down. Then we would just simply go like move to a new house. In the middle of doing that process, something really kind of changed in my heart, and I ended up getting the opportunity to work for Weld, and to work in men's housing. And I ended up like, you know, being like the assistant to the person who was like running men's housing. I was responsible for like the UAs and going and conducting the house meetings, like doing all this stuff. But I was working for this organization and doing this stuff now. And it was so important and so meaningful, you know? And I did it for a few years, and I stayed there, and like my life began to change and stabilize in all different kinds of interesting ways. After the relationship didn't work when I came out of prison, I decided to take several years and step away from and just be celibate. And so I did that for 5 years. I gave myself the gift of like really leaning into recovery and growing in that particular place. And that was the time I was at Weld.
Because that seemed to be a constant for you.
The relationships.
It went with
the relapses.
It went with the substances. It went with the relapses all the way through, you know, and again, this desire to belong to something, to be loved, to be held, and all those things. Like, you know, I chase that through addiction and all those twisted ways that we do.
Yeah. I think you're not alone. I think there's a very, very constant, you know, people don't always share it or even know their story for that matter. And like when you're sharing it like that, it's a common thread that a lot of people don't even identify. You know, so it's very important that you tapped in that. So celibacy is part of your program.
At the time, it definitely was. Yeah. I'm in a relationship now. I've been in a relationship for a couple of years, which is good, and incredibly informative. You learn a lot about yourself in relationships. Right? But I came back here. I got active in recovery here. Began to really be active in several groups, to sponsor and to continue to work. And eventually I moved from Weld, And I wanted to lean because when I came out of prison, one of the things I had really focused on doing was leaning into my cultural community. You know, part of like what the framework that I hang my spiritual experience and my recovery on, has to do with something that's much more traditional. So, with that thought in mind, after a few years, I stepped away from Weld, and I went, like with a lot of gratitude and a lot of love. I will say that like our relationship remains strong to this day. I'm now actually a board member at Weld. So I'm grateful that I have participated in all these different levels, and now I get to be there to offer insight, opinion, and help, participate still in this organization that I love so much, that took care of me so strongly and deeply. I went to work at Onkitawa, this indigenous organization. And what happened was during COVID, I started working with food. We had all these men's houses that needed food. So I started making these relationships with farmers and getting food. And we had this warehouse and we had like all this food. And Pat came in one day and he looks and he says, something's really happening here. Like you're really doing something. And we're making meals down there. We're making distribution boxes. We had been blessed with the opportunity to like take these resources and share them with people. And someone came up to me there, one of the people whose opinion I really respect and admire, one of the people I love. And she looked at me, she said, "We love that you work here. We love what you're doing, but it's so obvious to us. And we just want to tell you, because we love you, that it really feels like you're just in between chef jobs." And what she was lovingly telling me was like, "We would love to see you realize your dream and what's in your heart and go back into the world of food." So I went to Onkitawa to do that, and I worked with them for a little bit over a year. And then I caught the inspiration. It just seemed like the right time. And I stepped away from Onkitawa and I started my own project in Natongs Metsu. And for me, this experience has been a chance to be creative, to be in community, my culture, not only my recovery community, but my cultural community as well, in a way that's deeper than I ever thought possible. And I get to bring good news home to my family who heard so much bad news, my family who talked to a counselor while I was still out there, who said, "You might consider mourning Jason as if he's already passed, because most of these people don't make it back from where they are. Once they're playing with IV drugs and they're like way out and living in the jungle, you know what I mean? In houses they made it out of pallets. By and large, oftentimes something will happen out there and they won't come back."
Yeah.
And now we get to show up with good news and good stories to those people. And that's a gift I barely know how to accept. But out of respect for the fact that it exists, I accept it all the time. And I try to put my best heart and my best effort into it. And these days don't look, again, like I'm so grateful we don't resemble what we've been through.
That part.
On everything, right?
That part.
Yeah, man, I hear that.
Really
Man.
real.
Hey, well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for you coming out here today.
Yeah.
As we kind of close down, is there anything you want to share with those cats that are still struggling out there that, man, like, when I came into the rooms, you had, man, I still look up to you, but like, there are these moments like, man, you like, what you said, what'd you say? It's like, I don't look like what I've been through.
Yeah.
I don't look like you. People don't look like what they've been through when they've been around for a little bit.
Yeah. Because we heal, because because we recover, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
To like, think about the words recover. Like we grow a new sort of shell over ourselves that is like a fresh new version. The grass wants to grow every spring. You know what I mean? Like the creator wants us to like live and rejoice and wants us to like come back to health. You know what I mean? If you nurse a plant back to health and see it return to health, like, then you can understand that like nature wants these things to live and grow, just like nature wants us to live and grow. So once we get a chance to get out of our own way a little bit and stop creating the havoc and the chaos and the damage, we naturally start to sort of like redevelop. We recover ourselves with a fresh layer of like light and life, and it's here and it's real. And what I'm going to say to anybody who's going through it, keep going. And what I mean by that is like, if an elder once said to me once, "Hey man, if it feels like you're going through hell, keep going. Don't stop in hell. Keep going." And the other thing I'll say, I shared, and I think you heard in my story about a lot of relapses and a lot of falling down. And I was that less than 30 days dude in every meeting all over the city for a long time. I got sick of hearing me say it, let alone what anybody else said. I was more ashamed of the fact that like I was going around telling my newcomer story and not staying sober for a long time. I fell down 100 times. I just was given the opportunity to get up 101 times.
Yeah.
So if you're still out there, come on home. Like, don't give up on yourself, and don't think that any amount of things that you've been through have taken away your ability to come back home to us. We'll take you still.
We'll take you, man.
We love you.
That's some fire.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
I really look up to you. I always have since I came in. I remember being newly fresh out of treatment and seeing you at Cherry. I'm like, this guy's super cool. And you just had a good message and still continue to, almost 4 years later. So thanks for coming on. You have a beautiful message, bro. Super powerful. Super powerful.
Man, the hard part's over, you guys. All we need to do now is share our experience. You know what I mean? And take care of ourselves.
That's right.
The hard part's over.
Yeah. And again, just the new style podcast we have, the relaxed version, took the table out. Again, going back to the fact that 25 episodes in and we get to share this with you. Yeah. We've really grown here and it's just beautiful to see.
I'm proud of your milestone. I've been watching you guys for a minute and I really, I love the way that you're sharing in community. I love, of course, like so many of the people that you've had on are people that are near and dear to us that we all love. Yeah. But to see those people get a platform to tell their stories just like this is a really, really beautiful thing. Yeah.
Man, thank you. And just so like everybody knows, this has been a dream. Like there's only 25 people that have been on here. Yeah. Right. And maybe even less just because we do some 23 interesting things. But the point was like, these are spotlights that like, for me, when I started on this journey, there was like this list of people like, that would be a really cool experience to hear the long version of your story. Because I've never heard it, right? We've only heard snippets of it. And so I just, again, thank you for coming through, making dreams come true. Episode 25, Sober Champs. We're out of here, man. Hey, thanks a lot for having us, Fredo. We appreciate you, baby. Yeah, you know what it is back there. A lot of you cats don't see him, but just let you know, without him, this doesn't even stay consistent, man. So, Fredo, we appreciate you. We love you. Color Studios, Maria. All right, man. We out of Pioneer Square. Have a good one.
Stay blessed.
All right.